we really put James, the brother of Jesus, on the map. Before we wrote these books in the 1990s, early 2000s, nobody really even thought about Jesus having a brother. And what does it mean for him to have a brother? Well, it flies in the face of all Catholic and other Christian ideology, actually, because if he has a brother, then first of all, he is not supernatural. Second of all, Mary is not a virgin. And then it goes on and on and on and on. The normative Catholic response to this is, oh, he was only a cousin. He was a son by a different mother. Well, that is Jerome in the 5th century, 4th to 5th century. But actually, that's a theological response. There is no proof of that at all. All the texts speak of James, Greek name, Hebrew name Yaakov, but Greek name Jacob, Jacobus. But he's also always called the righteous one. All the texts speak of James the Just. I don't know if you ever heard of that. James the Just. We get, I think, James from Spanish into English. So he's also called James the Just, James the Righteous One. And what put me on it was my work in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm somewhat known for working pretty extensively in the Dead Sea Scrolls, been out there, done a lot of archaeological work, and broke the monopoly on the scrolls, which was again controlled by the church, on the interpretation of these scrolls. Now, one of the problems in the interpretation of the scrolls is we always heard they were Essenes, but no one ever understood what an Essene was. They were supposed to be peaceful Essenes, basically contemplating their navels, if you like, out in the wilderness someplace. But if you read their doctrines, this is not a peaceful group. They are not a loving group. They don't love their neighbors. They hate the sons of the pit. They're not turning the other cheek, and they're preparing for the final apocalyptic war against all evil on the earth. Now, how are they going to win? There's actually a war scroll outlining this. How are they going to win this final war? They're going to have these desert camps, and they're living in desert camps. And in the desert camps, the sectaries, if you want to call it, are practicing absolute purity regulations according to Hebrew law. Why are they practicing absolute purity regulations? Because they're a holy army, and they have a secret atomic weapon. The secret atomic weapon is the holy angels. And they are preparing for the holy angels to join their camps. I have this crazy idea that the holy angels will not join the camps if there's any human impurity there. So there cannot be any sexual intercourse, any wet dream at night, anything of that kind. And everything has to be perfectly pure. No women, unfortunately. Everything perfectly pure. The reason being, if the holy angels are going to come down and fight the whole might of the Roman Empire and all the rest of the peoples on the earth who are evil, the ones who are evil, then they have to be able to go back up to heaven, and they can't go back up to heaven if they encounter human impurity. Okay, why did I introduce it with that? Because the leader of this group is called the righteous teacher, or the teacher of righteousness. And when you look at him, when you hear about him in the texts, he's always called the tzaddik. The underlying text in Hebrew, whether it's in the Habakkuk commentary, the prophet Habakkuk and the commentary on that, or any of the other commentaries on different prophets, the word tzaddik is always moreh hatzedek in the interpretation. Okay, move over to James. James is the just. What is the just? In Hebrew, the tzaddik. Who is he? Well, the problem is distinguishing between literature and history. Now, people all love the Gospels. They all know the Gospels. But no one knows the really historical materials of the New Testament, because the Gospels are the storybook materials of the New Testament. Those are the art, but those are more like, how should we put it, literature. Those are not history. And we know from the material in them, they're not history. In fact, I've said finally at the end of this book that what they do is they reverse everything in the Dead Sea Scrolls to the absolute letter. Why am I drawing these parallels? Because I want to get closer to the Moreh HaTzedek, the teacher of righteousness, to James, the righteous one. Yaakov, the righteous one. Both of them are leaders of communities. Now, where do we hear about James the Just? So you speak to an ordinary Christian, and he says, well, some brothers of Jesus are mentioned in the scripture, James, Joses, Simon, and Jude. Joses being just a variation on the name Jesus. So Jesus has turned into his actual brother, and so on and so forth. But they know the Gospels, but they don't know the historical parts of the New Testament. What are the historical parts of the New Testament? Paul's letters. Not all of them, but the ones scholars generally agree are historical. Which one? When I went to California, Cal State Long Beach, no one wanted a course that didn't have Jesus in it. So I ended up teaching courses that I didn't know anything about because my dissertation was on Islamic law in Palestine and Israel. So we had to teach, mandated by state law, 4 courses a term, 8 courses a year. If you didn't want to go crazy and teach the same course over and over and over again, I mean, a place like Princeton, Yale, Cambridge, Harvard, or wherever, the professors maybe teach 2 courses a term or 1. They might teach 3 courses in a year, and it has to be in their discipline. I had to teach things in every discipline. So I learned Christianity as I went along. Islam, I knew. Judaism, I began teaching Old Testament and so on, all the way up to modern Jewish thought and Zionism. All these are on YouTube, should you want to look at them, all the courses, 8 courses that I have taught. So one develops a certain breadth of insight and knowledge there. For instance, I can tell you, Muhammad knows James's instructions to overseas communities. You say, well, what are James's instructions to overseas communities? Where did these come from? Well, you'd have to read Acts and know that suddenly Acts 15, very few people really read Acts for themselves, the narrative changes. You go from a he, she, their history. And so you come to a thing where Jerusalem Council, where James, who has never been introduced in Acts, the other James having disappeared, James, the brother of John. Some people think he went to Spain and so on, but he was killed according even to the book of Acts, never got out of Palestine if he ever existed. He looks like a stand-in for the real James. Why are these stand-ins? Because the real James, the brother of Jesus, is so embarrassing. In any case, in the book of Acts, his instructions to overseas communities are abstain from blood, which is Hebrew doctrine, things sacrificed to idols, fornication, etc. If you look at Islamic dietary law and things that carrion, things that have died of themselves or have been ripped by other animals. If you look at Islamic dietary law, it's exactly the same. Abstain from blood, carrion, etc., things sacrificed to idols, and this kind of thing. They've picked up James's instructions to the letter. Why hasn't Christianity? Because Paul attacks them viciously in his letters. Now, people don't know these letters, so they don't know that Paul is full of envy, anger. He actually, I don't know how to say it, he actually hates James. But we wouldn't even know James existed if we didn't let's take Galatians. Galatians is the key letter. Almost no Christian I've ever met who's not a professional person has ever read Galatians for themselves. And if you read chapter 1, there it is. Paul says he went up to Jerusalem after his first inspiration, and he saw no one but James, the brother of the Lord, and Peter. And then in chapter 2, he says, these super apostles, not that their importance means anything to me. And in the meantime, he's down in Antioch, which is probably not along the coast, but in northern Syria. And what's happening there? He says, the representatives of James, i.e. James, the brother of Jesus, came down. And Peter, who used to keep table fellowship with Gentiles, I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, but according to Hebrew dietary law, you wouldn't be able to, stop keeping table fellowship with Gentiles. And Barnabas followed him in this hypocrisy. He actually calls Peter and Barnabas hypocrites. Augustine in Northern Africa wrote Jerome in the 5th century and said, how dare Paul call Peter a hypocrite? Well, Jerome wrote back and said, there are some things we shouldn't answer or cannot answer. And that was the end of that particular question. But then, so Peter stops keeping table fellowship with Gentiles. But the point is, Peter defers to James. So it's clear Peter is not the leader of the early church. The leader of the early church is James. Now, I've only got a short time here, so I want to just compress things a little bit further so we can get to questions and things like that. But just to move on, and that's why I say you must read Galatians for yourself. You can't have someone else read it for you. You can have your priest, minister, or anyone else. You have to read it for yourself and see you're dealing with a pretty nasty piece of work here. Someone who is not full of love. Where does it come out? Chapter 4 of Galatians. The representatives of James come down to Paul's communities, seemingly in Galatia, and they want to circumcise his communities. In the earlier chapter 2 of Galatians, he calls the some from James those of the circumcision. He wants to and Paul says, in response to these people coming down, whose importance means nothing to him, I wish they would themselves cut off. You look, it's there. Meaning, I wish they would their own gonies cut off. Now, this is a very nice fellow, a very tender-hearted, loving fellow. So what happens? How do we know there's, in the last part of Acts, that there's any proof to all of this? Go forward from Acts 15:16 to James's instructions where we first meet him and he's not introduced, to Paul's last visit to Jerusalem. He comes up, and we're in the we document. Probably Luke is writing this, and they got it from some sort of memorandum he's been keeping. He said, we came up to Jerusalem, and Paul went in to see James to tell him of all the wonderful things we've been doing overseas. And then James responded, this is our James. He's the head of the church. Nobody knows it. He's the head of the church. So James responded, but you see, Paul, we've heard that you've been telling everyone overseas not to practice circumcision, saying things against this temple, against the law, and against the people. So to show this is actually quoted in the book of Acts in the we document, where the we narrative takes over till the end. To show there's no, and it's a different kind of narrative because it's not supernatural events, it isn't any of these things. To show there's no truth to any of these things, we want you to go into the temple and take a Nazarite oath. That's a temporary Nazarite oath. Christianity, Nazarenes are really named after Nazarite type activities. Qumran is a community of lifelong Nazarites. And Nazarites abstain from certain things. We want to take a short one, a temporary Nazarite oath, and pay for 4 others because he's perceived as having money which he's raised overseas. Pay for 4 others. In other words, to publicly show there's no truth to the rumors we've heard about you. And he's nothing loath, Paul, of course, there is truth, every truth to it. Read the whole book of Acts and you'll see that there's not one moment that he isn't criticizing the temple, the people, and the church, not one letter either. And the law. Nothing loath, he goes into the temple. What is he being set up? We don't know. But in chapter 21, he goes into the temple, and the people see him, and they go mad, and they say, "This is the person," and the we document is recording this, who teaches against our people, against our temple, and against this place. And they don't want to kill him yet, though Acts says there are people who have taken a Nazarite oath that they will not eat or drink until they have killed Paul. In any event, they throw him. No one in Christianity I know even knows this material or ever hears of it. They throw him out of the temple. So first we have a James, then we have the leader of the community. I already told you we have a James, we have a righteous one who's the leader of the Qumran community. They throw him out and they bar the door behind him. That's actually said. That's in the scrolls too, about barring the door against wrongdoers. What happens? Roman troops up in Antonia in the towers come down and rescue Paul. So that's been obviously prearranged. And what happens? They set Paul up before the crowds and they make the crowds listen to a lecture from Paul. And then they take him down under protective custody to Caesarea, the Roman administrative center. So they're protecting him from these, whoever wants to, well, so we say, dispose, get him, whatever. And this is all in the second part of Acts, the more historical part of Acts. So this is the difference between history and literature. Literature is, something else. And most of the literature we're talking about was written in Rome or Alexandria by Greeks. That's why we don't have any Hebrew versions. So we're getting a kind of literary propaganda, the Gospels, no one in Palestine spoke this way and was crucified. There was probably a crucified person. Paul says the only thing he knows about Jesus, which is funnily enough, is that he was crucified. So if he was crucified for revolutionary activities. But the Gospels are anxious to show, oh no, this is a rumor, a lie that the Jews are spreading. And Pontius Pilate actually doesn't want to do it, but the Jews force him. But what do we know about Pontius Pilate? Philo goes to Rome in the same period, Philo, the Jewish philosopher in the 30s. And he tells us that Pilate was removed because he was the most violent, unjust, bloodthirsty governor that the Romans ever sent out to Palestine. So square those things if you can. You can't square them, and you see what's being done, a total reversal of history. So going back finally to getting to your questions and things of that kind, why have I put the scrolls together with the material about James? And this is the early Christian literature is full of material about James the Just, most of it very authentic. And he's always called that, as a writer called Hegesippus at the end of the 1st century. There are others called, well, obviously, there's Eusebius who collects them later. There's Jerome, who talks about where James is buried, and so on and so forth. Everybody knew who James, the brother of Jesus, was, except us. And why is it important to know it? Because to my mind, this is the authentic messianism of Palestine. What you see is the reversed messianism of the Roman Empire, which turned everything into its mirror opposite to pacify these groups. I'm summing it up quickly, like I know it all, but that's the result of, a 650-page book based on a longer 1,000-page book. And his publishing company has also published a book I wrote, which is the material we cut out of this, another 1,000 pages, which upset everybody, called the New Testament Code. So the footnotes didn't get in it and ended up on my website, roberteisenman.com. But I think we can end there and have some questions. Historical material in Paul about Christ, except the crucifixion. The problem is Paul never knew him. He comes later in the day. Now, I have actually written one of the essays that Mr. Ilfeld's publishing company has published is called Paul as Herodian, where I have shown that Paul is not even of Jewish background, that he is of the Herodian family, which was imported by the Roman conquerors to rule over Palestine in place of the Maccabeans. And they are a sort of mixed Idumean Greek group of people from the Gaza area and from more inland in Palestine. And I go through why Paul's origins. There's a person in Josephus, the Jewish historian of the 1st century, who also went over to the Romans. And by the way, Josephus knows about James. He says this James, who was so beloved by everybody, was executed by the executed by the Jews. He was executed by Jewish Pharisees, Jews of the opposite party, not because he believed in Christ, but because he was of the opposite party. And he had gone into the temple and done on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement on behalf of the whole people. And he was stoned. And this was in 62 AD. And Josephus knows the date. But he goes over to the Romans. Josephus is so interesting because he describes in his autobiography, if you haven't read it, his Vita, where he's so hated by the Jews because of having become a traitor and going over to the Romans, that when Titus, the Roman commander, the son of Vespasian, sends him out to ask the Jews on the Jerusalem walls to the head, and he falls. And he said a huge crowd went up from the walls because the Jews thought their enemy Josephus was dead. And he's very proud of this. He actually glories in this. So we have a very complex political situation here, which has not been understood by later generations because of the kind of doctrines that have grown up. And what we've tried to do is dig under this, both in the New Testament Code, another 1,000-page book, and this James, the brother of Jesus book here, to give people the historical data to decide for themselves. We don't say we're right. We don't say you're right. But you need the data to decide who's right. and you need the data from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you need the data from the unread parts of the New Testament and other early church literature. Another question. I hope we don't have any ISIS Christians here. I'll be beheaded. I'd be beheaded tomorrow. But the point is, no, not Islam is very interesting. Is very interesting. James, yes. Muhammad is adopting a Jamesian position on many things, and he uses Paul's arguments in 1 Corinthians as we are the children of Abraham. Paul says we Christians are the true children of Abraham through the Spirit. The Jews are actually the children of Hagar, the second wife. You have to read. Paul is incredible. He can be so nasty when he wants. He says some people, chapter 8 of 1 Corinthians, are so weak. James, we know, was a vegetarian, that they will only eat vegetables. Paul says, don't listen to Jewish law. All the meat in the butcher shops is clean. That's in chapter 9 of 1 Corinthians. To me, that's historical material. Yes, to my mind, and you can stone me, do whatever you want. The Gospels are. Wait, let me finish. The Gospels are more or less fiction. Now, I don't think Muhammad understood that. I wouldn't expect to have understood that, because what he was taught, people didn't have that kind of insight in those days. They weren't studying the materials in that way. But the point is, I think we have a fictional good literature here, and that's why it has been so gripping. But the historical materials, I tell you, are found in some of Paul's letters, are found in parts of Acts, the we parts of Acts, etc. There's more historical material in the we parts of Acts. And the other material, I am afraid, I don't want to call it fiction, but it reverses the situation in Palestine almost point for point for point. And they do this. The authors, you see, Josephus, the Jewish historian, he knows Paul has a letter to the Thessalonians where he sends his friend, an apostle, to, not the Thessalonians, the Philippians, to Rome. And this same apostle and friend of Paul, and it becomes Titus's secretary for Greek letters, and later he survives and so on, and he also became Nero's secretary before that. In fact, Titus's brother Domitian his name is Epaphroditus. He's both in Philippians and in Josephus. Josephus dedicates all his works to Epaphroditus. This is the same person that's in Paul's letters, and he is the head of the literary establishment in Rome, and he's a Christian of the Orthodox kind. So what happens? Domitian, who is Titus's other brother, doesn't like him for some reason and has him executed. Why does he have him executed? Because he apparently held the sword for Nero to run on. And he said he raised his hand against an emperor. And so he has this Epaphroditus executed. But all this is in Josephus. Josephus has an autobiography, and he dedicates all his works to Epaphroditus, and Epaphroditus is in Paul. So I say we have this circle there, a very capable circle, not just these people, but others who know the material and know what they're doing and know how to present it in a pro-Roman fashion. It's almost impossible to disagree. If you just know the theology and have heard others speak or have been taught by others and not looked into it yourself, you'll disagree absolutely. But when you yourself start looking at the material and you discover that Paul is actually not a very loving person, not a very charitable person, actually full of jealousy, envy, and in fact hatred, and shows no Christian virtue whatsoever, then you begin to wonder, but you have to, how will you know it? Your church leaders aren't going to tell you this. That would be divisive. You have to discover it by reading the material yourself. When you read the material yourself, you say, hey, this guy's as bad as Eisenman, you know? so that's what involves reading the material. You have to read Josephus. You have to read Paul's letters. And as I said, you have to read the historical parts of the New Testament, which are Acts 15 onwards, the we document, and some of, as I said, some of Paul's letters. Jamie somehow came out of Jacob, and I'm not enough of a linguist to explain that particular point. Reading a thing for yourself and seeing if you have supernatural events, people walking on waters with perpetual virgin mothers and things of that kind. Or you have a simple thing saying, we went up to Jerusalem. We went in to see James. James asked us, told us that we've heard about that you were doing these things overseas. Please do this. Take a Nazarite oath. Something Paul would be totally opposed to theoretically because he doesn't observe Hebrew law. Well, all these things are very sensible, actual, real, and not supernatural. So if you like supernatural things, well, then it's an historical book. But if you're a historically minded person, supernatural things are not part of what we normally consider history. They're part of what we normally consider literature. So if you like, that kind of thing, then you would consider that historical too. But I don't think that you can call the first part of the book of Acts or the Gospels historical. Is there anything historical in the book of in the Gospels? Well, I can tell you one thing that isn't historical. Absolutely, the portrait of Pontius Pilate. It's the very opposite of the known Pontius Pilate we know from Josephus, who was a pro-Roman person, and Philo. So you've got to make some determinations from your knowledge. If you have no knowledge, then you're not in a position to make these determinations. The Gospels, we all love the Gospels. They're very charming, attractive stories. We know the Knights of the Round Table stories too. We know all kinds of stories that are very attractive. Just because they're charming and attractive don't make them historical. They make them charming and attractive. So the point is, if you want, normally historical material is unattractive. It actually deals with material that is sometimes rather repulsive, negative, and unpleasant. And the people involved in it are not doing necessarily things that we would admire. But if you don't read the whole gamut of the material, you can't make the determination of what is, well, I didn't want to use the word fiction, but what is literary. That's a more kinder word. What is literary and what is historical? And I can again say with absolute 100% scientific certainty, as far as I'm concerned, maybe not as far as you're concerned, you first have to read it all to make that determination that those letters of Paul that I mentioned, Galatians, Philippians, and so on, 1 and 2 Corinthians, you read 1 and 2 Corinthians and make the hair on your head stand up if you read it for yourself, not through someone else's eyes. And those kind of materials that we document, as I said, Josephus, etc., the Dead Sea Scrolls, totally historical. In fact, I think what we have in the scrolls, people underestimate that. Essenes. No, we don't have Essenes here. There's another historian from Rome. I think his name was Hippolytus, and he collected Josephus in a different way. And he has 4 kinds of Essenes. 2 kinds of Essenes are Zealot Essenes and Sicari Essenes. Sicari Essenes are the name the Romans, Josephus and others gave the cutthroat Essenes, because Zealots. They gave the extreme, but they weren't even called Essenes. Gave the cutthroat groups of Zealots. And the reason they were called Sicari is Josephus says they carried a curved dagger like Arabs do under their clothing, and they used this to cut the throats of their enemies. But what they probably were carrying is a knife, a circumciser's knife. They were the party of the circumcision, as Paul calls James's party then. So you can call them Sicari killers, or you can call them Sicari circumcisers. So what this Hippolytus version of Josephus says is that the Sicari Essenes would, if they heard anyone talking about the law who was not circumcised, would, like Islam, offer him the choice of circumcision or death. So, these are not nice people, and these are not nice facts, but to my mind, you're getting close to history when you hear things like that. So I think that then what do we know? Who committed suicide? Eitan knows, on Masada, the extreme Essenes called Sicari. And they killed all their whole family rather than be taken Roman prisoners in 73. So, who are these people? We found Qumran texts up there. Qumran is the name for where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Dead Sea Scroll texts up on Masada. So put it all together. What do you have up there? Sicari Essenes. But these are not peace-loving Essenes. These are Essenes of the kind that observe every letter of the law and circumcision, and will not allow people to say anything about the law, who are not circumcised, and who died in the war against Rome the most noble way under every torture, rather than give any information or give any other person up. And Josephus makes that, and he makes that clear about the Sicarii, and Hippolytus makes it clear about the Sicarii. Josephus and Paul. I think Paul too was one. There were Gentiles in the Dead Sea Scroll community. That's why I have these long books, to analyze the text and show you the passages where we can show that there were God-fearers. You know that Gentiles in Christianity are called God-fearers. We know that there were God-fearers. The Damascus document that was found in the Cairo Geniza, and also many copies in the Qumran Dead Sea Scrolls corpus. The Damascus document at the end speaks of the God-fearers and how they're saved. So there were God-fearers among them, meaning Gentiles. But they also expelled people who broke any letter of the law. And I think that Paul would be among the expellees. And that would account for his bitterness, and also, to some degree, his Herodian background would explain his power. How did he have a Roman citizenship? How did he have a Roman citizenship? Well, if you were Herodians, the Romans had bestowed the Roman citizenship on the whole family. So where did it come from? And why was he so successful in Asia Minor? Because there were Herodian governors all through Asia Minor serving the Roman Empire, meaning Herod, the family of Herod. And those final chapters of the book of Acts have Paul encountering the Herodian governor of the time, and also some of the royal Jews called Bernice and Agrippa II. And these people all betrayed Palestine, Judea, went to Rome with Titus and Vespasian. And in fact, Josephus, when he betrayed the cause, was supposed to be leading the revolutionary contingent in Galilee. And then everyone was supposed to commit suicide when the Romans had them surrounded. I'm having to compress everything. I can't give you the whole material, but Josephus describes it in detail. Everyone was supposed to commit suicide. And so what happens is Josephus and 9 others, the other 2, he and another helped the others commit suicide. And then they go and surrender to the Romans, and they proclaim Vespasian, the Roman commander who destroyed the temple and the Jewish people in Palestine, the world ruler that was going to come out of Palestine to rule the world, that the Christians then turned into the Messiah Jesus. I know it's hard for people to comprehend because we've been so brainwashed and indoctrinated with the material that we're familiar with, that to look at real historical material, which does exist, and the scrolls have just totally puzzled and bamboozled everybody. I don't know what to make of them. So they think we have peaceful Essenes when you couldn't see a more aggressive, warlike, unpeaceful collection of documents if you bothered reading them for yourselves. So the problem is people have to read for themselves. And that's what his publishing company is all about. And that's what we need to do. And without that, we're stuck where we are. And I'm afraid, frankly, we're stuck where we are. Thank you. Yeah, I hate to brag, but I'll do a little bragging. I have a brother who's a famous architect, Peter Eisenman. He's doing a lot of remodeling in Santiago de Compostela. He's done the visitor center there. He's doing the cultural center, which includes an archaeological museum and so on. He's older than me. He did the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin, those standing stones there, and so on and so forth. So I'm very familiar with Santiago de Compostela. In fact, the governor of Galicia, which is where Santiago is, invited me to come and see things and talk about James. So what I've been asked here, what Andrew has asked is James, what James is buried there? Well, here's what I think. First of all, James, the brother of John, may or may not even have existed, and you'd have to read my books to go into that material in detail for yourself and decide for yourself what you think. I give you the reasons why I don't think he really existed to an extent. And it's cover for the other James. He's the James, the brother of John. No, James, the brother of Jesus. Anyway, whatever happens to him, by about chapter 8 or 9 or 10 in Acts, he's eliminated, he's beheaded. So he never had a chance to get to Spain for sure, even if he existed. So how did this box of bone box get to Santiago de Compostela? You know, Santiago de Compostela is in northwestern Spain. and it's the center of Christian pilgrimages to this very day. And there's a box there. I've seen it. I've been there. You've been there. Yeah. I've seen it. It's under the altar, and it looks like a Hebrew ossuary, a real James ossuary, not the phony one we've been hearing about in the press for the last 10 years, based on our book, A10. They read it in Palestine, Israel, and they suddenly discovered themselves there was a James, the brother of Jesus, and willy-nilly, lo and behold, an ossuary with the name James, the son of Jacob, the son of Joseph, the brother of Jesus, appeared. Except the phraseology, the brother of Jesus, seems to most people, I don't want to get into a lawsuit of libel or anything here, seemed to a lot of people in a different handwriting. In any case, there is an ossuary at Santiago de Compostela. Is it the James ossuary? Why do they think it is the James ossuary? Well, here's how it could have happened. When the Muslims came into Palestine, which would be in the 600, 700 period, the 7th, 8th century, Christian holy sites were no longer so carefully or fully protected. So the Muslims did not stop Christian pilgrims from coming to the land, but they wouldn't necessarily protect Christian artifacts. And so you could have people from Spain. And we know that there was a James burial site, ossuary. There's even an Armenian church of St. James, meaning the brother of Jesus, that says they had the ossuary there to this day in Jerusalem. In any case, Christian pilgrims could have come, I say, in the 8th, 9th century, when this material suddenly appeared in Spain, and brought things like that to Spain and deposited them in the town of, well, St. James. Santiago is St. James. Compostela is of the fields, I think. In any case, the point of the matter is there are stories about the ossuary at Santiago de Compostela. And my feeling is I would have done this if the governor had finally had me come there and talk at my brother's cultural center and so on, that the ossuary there, if it is authentic, then it's James, the brother of Jesus ossuary, not James, the brother of John. And it could be because pilgrims could easily have gotten a hold of it and brought it there after the Muslim conquest, which is exactly when it appeared in Spain.
Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Give me a Yahoo up in the chat if I could be heard. Blessings, family. Give me a Yahoo up in the chat if I could be heard. We cooking today. You know me, I like to bring in the appetizer before I, hit you with the full course meal. So that was Professor Robert Eisenman. That's whose book we've been going over lately. I think we in chapter 6 today. We gonna eat, you know what I mean? We gonna eat. Nazarene edition, part 108. History versus literature, part 5. Dang, this didn't turn into a mini-series. You dig? So attempting to look at what was really going on during the Mashiach's time, first century, through a historical lens based off the little bit of data that we have. You know what I mean? And there is a difference between history and literature. Salute the first century Messianic freedom fighters, man. That, that stood against Roman romanticization, if that's a phrase, or Greek Hellenization, just like we salute the Maccabees and them. I salute the first century Messianic freedom fighters, because the entire war against Rome from 66 of the Common Era to 73 of the Common Era, that was fueled off the prophecy in Numbers 24 and 17, the star prophecy, and about a ruler coming up out of Jacob. The whole war was fueled off of that. That was a Messianic war. You see what I'm saying? And then when you get into the early 2nd century, you got the Bar Kokhba revolt. A lot of us don't know our history. We stopped right at 70 AD. You got the Keto Wars in 115. You got the Bar Kokhba revolt, 132 to like 136 of the Common Era. You know what I mean? Bar, Sun, Kokhba, Star. son of the star. Again, another messianic, you know what I mean, uprising against the oppressors and all that. So, you know, a lot of people, man, you know what I mean, a lot of people kind of throw shade at the zealots in them. Kind of throw shade at the Sakari in them, you know what I mean? I'm not talking about the Israelite group today. I'm talking about historically speaking, right? But a lot of us don't realize, well, hold on. Them was the brothers that were standing up for righteousness. So I salute the brothers, man. I'm sympathetic toward the cause. I was looking at something. I ain't verified it thoroughly yet, so don't hold me on it. But I was looking at something that was saying that that Masada in 73 fell to the Romans on Passover. You dig? So, you know, that's a whole lot of symbology there too. Brothers standing up for righteousness and all, you know, they lay their life down instead of deciding to be taken as slaves. They like, oh no, our body's so pure. We ain't even allow these heathens to. We not even allow ourselves to fall alive into their hands. You see what I'm saying? But all that's looked at like that's wrong today. You know what I mean? You be like, oh, well, you know, Jerusalem, because they were sinning. Like, what man don't sin? Of course, but I mean, at some point, you as a man or a woman, everybody got a breaking point. Eventually, you're going to be like, nah, I ain't finna do that. You dig? But you know the lesson, because had I been back there, I'd have been rocking too. You dig? But hindsight 2020, right? So what do we get out of that, though? Because that ain't the only uprising that's ever been put down, right? Even in modern time. You dig? What we got Rosewood. What we got Black Wall Street. You see what I'm saying? And we be like, yeah, that's what it is. And yeah, if I'm with you, I'm with you. We got to rock, you dig? But what's the lesson to be learned? I was reading a passage in a WASP not that long ago. And it was one of the prophets that true God was dealing with. And he had told him or taught him, I forgot which prophet it was. Anybody know, they can post it. I forgot which prophet it was, but he had told him, he was like, this is how you respond to any type of aggressor that come towards your land. All right. And he was like, this is what you say. Like, this is the creator's land. I can't sell it to you and I can't spill blood over it. What I'm going to do is get out your way. And then our forefathers would pack up and go somewhere else and get that deponent. You see? We fight for something because we just so attached to it. Now you got to go back 2,000 years, bros, and them like it's the promised land, nigga. It's the end of the world to them. It's the end of the world to them, y'all. You got to remember, these is Israelites who believe that this is the chosen land. We the chosen people. We standing up for righteousness, nigga. We ain't said Vespasian is Messiah. We rocking. We ain't with no naked statues of Caesar all up in Palestine, all up in our temples. We are not pledging allegiance to Caesar. We ain't paying taxes to Caesar. There you go. Nigga, stop being rebellious. Pay your taxes, nigga. Stop being rebellious, nigga, and pay your taxes. I can hear you now, right? But then you salute. Guess who you salute? You salute the turn this off. You salute the Boston Tea Party. You salute the Boston Tea Party. What happened? These patriots who were called terrorists by the British Crown, but across the seas was called patriots. They refused to be taxed by foreigners, right? And that's how the whole Boston Tea Party kicked off. Well, what if I told you it was some messianic zealots that was on the same thing 2,000 years ago? It was like we not submitting to Roman rule or none of that. Look, let me show y'all something. There's proof in it right here. Let me show y'all the article I got up right here. Show y'all this. All right. You ain't here playing no games. Show y'all this right here. No, y'all can see that. I don't know why I'm there. Nah, I ain't trying to be on with McCullough. Let me show y'all something. Let me show you how thorough these, man. This was a highly sophisticated movement, man. did. Highly sophisticated. The more I look at it, the more I be like, dang, man, these bros was really with it. Like they was with it all. You did. This right here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and post this in there. Yeah, man, we ain't even posted. Look, what you learn from this. Learn from this, right? We learn from the mistakes of our forefathers. I salute them. Had I been with you, I'd have been with you. we talk that. Look, we talk everything else later. Like, man, y'all tripping. But if I'm with you, I'm with you. You dig? So I'd have been with you rocking. But as we look back, hindsight 2020, you know what I mean? When someone of more power and authority come against you, it's time to get out the way. Time to get out the way. That's the Creator's land. You look, you ain't got no authority to sell it nor spill blood over it. And what we do, we were so cold with the botany and the science and the communion with the other forces, man, that it wasn't nothing for us to get something back cracking to create a land flowing with milk and honey. That ain't nothing for us. A very prosperous land. We can do that with the desert. You can do that with the desert. And then look at this right here. All right, let me go ahead and post this in the chat for y'all. Make sure y'all got this. All right. Make sure y'all got this. I ain't posted yet. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Opiates, the whole point is the taxation, Yafa. Taxation. They refuse to be taxed by foreigners. You did, because you being taxed puts you in a perpetual state of poverty. Like, who is one man to tax another man? How does one son of the Creator tax another son of the Creator for breathing and experiencing the Creator's creation just as he is? You dig? So again, I salute the brethren. Dig, but hindsight 2020, when somebody of some more power come against you, you dig, like, come on, we still go to Walmart. Look, listen to me. You ain't got enough bullets. You ain't got enough ammo to take down this beast. You dig? You waste all your bullets on New Year's. The Negro is out of bullets right now. If the war kicked off right now, Nam Negro got bullets. Nam. You waste all your bullets on New Year's Eve. And you barely replace them. All right, right here. Treasure trove of ancient coins found with a telling message. All right, this is one for Israel.org. All right, look at this. For the freedom of Zion declared the Hebrew inscription on the ancient bronze coins found in a cave that had been sealed for what? 2,000 years. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. For the freedom or for the redemption of Zion. All right. Declared the Hebrew inscription on the ancient bronze coins found in the cave that had been sealed for 2,000 years. Ironically, just in time for the festival of what? Freedom. Hebrew University archaeologist Eliab Mazar came across a cave full of treasures doing excavations below the Temple Mount southern wall, and close by seals from King Hezekiah and possibly Isaiah the prophet have been found. So it's archaeology about the Israelites, man. You know what I mean? Like, it ain't no denying that. What we addressing now is behavior and the God. That's what everybody mad at. You understand? Because we done made a distinction. We done drew a line in the sand. We talking about Creator. Who you talking about? At the end of the day, who you talking about? You understand? Now watch this. Treasure cave. The cave unearthed in the Ophel dig in Jerusalem contained coins with inscriptions that help us to precisely date them to the years what? There it is right there. That was the uprising. 66 through 70 AD. So this means that they have found coins. And the inscription on the coins say for the redemption or for the freedom of Zion. That means that this messianic movement was so sophisticated, they understood that they had to print their own money. They understood they had to produce their own currency. What a revolution is any Negro in America. Now step back and look at the civil rights. Look at any so-called freedom, black power movement. Where you getting your funding from? And you mean to tell me you got to go to the same beast that you fighting against to get funding to fight against them? Nah, Jack, it don't work like that. It don't work like that. America's a zoo. You just running around in it. The animals don't run the zoo. The animals run around the zoo. But you ain't running nothing. Right? Ain't none of your movements got nothing to do with even creating your own currency. So what you think you about to do? Look at this. Look at this right here. It says, but along with the optimistic message on the coins minted by who? The rebels. How you gonna call those who are being attacked rebels? Just like they call us thugs today, right? Rebels, rebel rousers. But these are the very people you demonizing, the very people you attacking. Huh? Optimistic message on the coins minted by the rebels who were fighting for freedom towards the end of the Second Temple era were later coins with a different message. At first, the Hebrew zealots or the Judean zealots were certain they'd win their country back from the Roman conquerors. But the coins dated 70 AD that were found in the same cave carried a different rallying cry for the redemption of Zion. By that last year of the rebellion, it had become obvious that their resistance was not going to survive for long, and that the best they could hope for was the eventual redemption of Zion. So that's in history right there, y'all. That's archaeology. That's what they done dug up. You understand? That mean that movement wasn't just a whole bunch of cats carrying pickaxes. You understood? They understood the guerrilla warfare so much to the point to where what did they do? They produced their own currency. You see, there's no way any group, name any group you've been a part of, right? Especially if it's a radical one that's supposed to be aimed at or that's anti-government, should I say. It ain't even got to be aimed at the overthrow of it. It's just against it. You understand? If you ain't formed your own currency, you ain't talking about nothing. Because you guess who you got to go to get funding to fight against them? You got to go to them. Nah, Jack. Talking to Haaretz newspaper, Mazar reported that the coins were about 1.5 centimeters in diameter, with Judean symbols such as the 4 species mentioned in the Bible: palm, myrtle, citron, and willow. These are trees, species of trees, along with a goblet believed to have been used in temple worship. The floor of the cave was a thick layer dating to the Hasmonean period. Maccabee salute. Going by characteristic pottery and coins. The later it lasted through the days of King Herod, but not later, Mazar explained. It was quite large, being some 7 meters by 14, but there was no evidence that people were living in it. A likely scenario is that the rebels, here they go again, calling us rebels, were stockpiling things in the cave for their future use, including ceramic cookware and other pottery, as well as the coins, but never did use it. It was not long after those last coins were minted that Jerusalem was destroyed. But as Jesus said it would be, then it goes into the whole prophecy. All right. We are in the happy position to know that Zion has indeed finally been restored 2,000 years after its destruction. Stop it. But that right there is to show you that, look, in history, man. In history, you got coins. All right. And then some of the literature that we're going to be reading today, or some of the book, Robert Eisman's book we're going to be reading today, at the bottom of some of the pages, it shows the coins. You dig? So it is what it is. If you're getting some understanding so far, give me a 9 up in the chat. Bless up. One brother Daryl Cosmine, right? The block, the only world, the end of the world to them. They know no other reality. Exactly. That was the end of the world for them, man. Yeah, running the master for funding. Make it make sense. Shalom to everybody in the chat. I see y'all. Bless up. All praises. Let's get into it, though. Let's go ahead and work. Let's get into it. Good to see everybody. Good to be seen. I salute you all in the love and the light of the Creator. Yeah, hindsight 2020, though, man. You know? Yeah, I understand. If I'm with you, I'm with you. So at present time, if we in it, we in it. So I understand. I'm sympathetic toward the brothers and sisters and children that lost their lives in that. And then if you didn't lose your life, you went into slavery. More hell, forced to fight in the Coliseum arenas as a gladiator against animals and all that, lions and tigers and birds, you dig? Yeah. Let's get into some of this. Good to see y'all in the building. Abundant blessings to all. And like I say, hindsight 2020. You understand if an entity of more power or force come against what it is that you got going collectively, then why ain't the understanding, instead of submitting to them, instead of resisting them, get out the way? Moderate. But see, we can call that 2,000 years later looking back. Because if you convince you fighting for righteousness, in which they were, it make perfect sense. It make perfect sense. Why wouldn't he? Same reason that the Maccabees, the sons of Matthias, and them, same reason they stood up. It makes sense. You dig? But no, we got to learn to use wisdom and apply wisdom. Get up out of there, and we turn something else into an oasis. We'll turn the desert into a land flowing with milk and honey. That should be the wisdom. Nah, don't stay and submit, and don't fight and resist. Get out of there. Get out of there. You know what I mean? Survive. Get on up out of there. That's what you do. You dig? That's the wisdom that you can apply, especially in today's time. You understand? They allowing you Negroes to carry guns now. Allowing. Oh man, it's open carry. You really think you ready to get it on with the government? Stop it. These heathens have hellfire missiles. What are you talking about? You ain't talking about nothing. You got a pocket full of bullets. That's all you got. You ain't talking about nothing. You probably can get somebody up off you real quick, and that's about it. So we got to learn to apply wisdom and learn to move out the way. You understand? That's what we are to learn from the past actions of our forefathers and foremothers. Whether what they did was good or bad, you're supposed to look back and learn from it. See, without a history to look back on, you understand? You are people that really don't exist. What do you stand on? Your answer, you stand on the shoulders of your ancestors. Well, who are they? You dig? Let's get into some of this. Good to see y'all in the building. Blessed up. Salute. All right, present what it is. And let's get into some of this. That's right. My brother Daryl calls mine. Y'all go like, subscribe, and share. All right, let me get some up here for y'all. All right, back at it. Video we was watching earlier. This old boy, he the author of this. Robert Eisenman James, the brother of Jesus and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Volume 1, the historical James, Paul the enemy, and Jesus' brothers as apostles. Ooh, I know. That the history got somebody ready to kill you, boy. They'd be like, oh, nah, bro, man. So you used to be my favorite. That bro told me earlier, bro, you used to be my favorite. I say straight, man, one of the hardest, man. I say, well, dang, off your own lips. I'm one of the hardest ones you ever that ever did it when it comes to the Israelite thing. Even if you disagree with me, you owe it to yourself to figure out what I'm talking about, right? Like, yeah, all right. Now, when you ready, I'm here. It's all good, you know what I mean? Nothing but a conversation to be had. But off your own lips, I'm that dude. Off your own lips, I doze this. All praise to the Creator, no praise to me. But off your own lips, Jack, that's what you said earlier. All right. Well, you at least owe it to yourself to see what I'm on now. You dig? Much love, though. You know it's love. Love is love. All right, so we in chapter 6. Let me check this chat real quick. We in chapter 6, the first appearance of James. James is the brother of Messiah, the brother of Yahshua, Yaakov. Yaakov. Make sure we good. Is we up? Okay, y'all can see that. Bang, bang, bang. To say they had Jesus, James, John, bro, James. Bang, bang, bang. All right, let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Chapter 6, the first appearance of James in Acts. The book of Acts as history. Historically speaking, James first appears in a really tangible way in the book of Acts. But the presentation is not a straightforward one. That's an excellent point to point out. And that's true. There are, as usual, puzzling lacanae. But no, hold on. Materials known from other sources are left out, and things that should logically have been covered are missing. To the perspicacious observer, however, the traces of other data are still there to be filled in by inference from what is said elsewhere or the underlying implications of the text itself. To the neophyte, this can be unsettling. But once he or she has grasped what is really occurring, it can be uplifting, approaching the joy of a discovery of enlightenment. So we're saying to the new booty, to the fresh fish, it'd be discouraging at first, unsettling. Like, dang, you dig? Because again, you're attempting to look at what is going on through an historical lens and weed out the myth. You dig? But he's like, you can grasp it, really grasp it. Hey, this is an enlightening journey. Look at this. First, the reader should realize that the book of Acts cannot be considered a historical presentation. Do you understand this? Do you understand this? Somebody probably spilled their coffee behind it. You did, but just bear with me. There is too much mythologizing. Say it again. There is too much mythologizing. Too much that is out and out fiction. Too much fantasizing. Important materials are left out, yet underlying the presentation, the broad lines of a certain kind of history can be discerned. For instance, how was the succession to Jesus managed? We hear about an election of sorts, but then this turns out not to have been the election of Jesus' successor, which would have been the logical expectation at this point in a narrative purporting to cover the beginnings of the early church, but rather clearly obscurantis material about the election of a 12th apostle to succeed, not Jesus, but of all people, Judas, his alleged betrayer. This is the first bit of sleight of hand in Acts, and this election, as we shall see, will dovetail nicely with notices in early church literature about a first election of James as bishop or bishop of bishops of the early church. Oh, we cooking. We cooking. Give me an 8 if you're getting some understanding. I love to be the bearer of bad news sometimes. I love to be the bearer of bad news. History versus literature, baby. Keep it real with yourself, all right? Now look at this right here. Questions like why there had to be 12 apostles in the first place, or who aside from the election of this inconsequential successor to Judas named Matthias succeeded Jesus, are passed by in silence. Then there are the questions about the identity of the majority of the apostles, or what a bishop or an archbishop actually was. Not to mention how James can be found in this position in the first place. Acts is normally thought of as being the Acts of the apostles in general, that is, the 12, who are variously listed according to which account one is following. So he's saying even the list of the apostles. That was something else I was going to do. I was going to make a short out of that. Make a short out of the if you compare the list of the apostles in the Gospels, there are different names. I know you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to deal with it. It just depends on which list you're looking at. You're looking at the one in Matthew or the one in Luke. There are different names. Lists don't add up. I know. So he say apostles in general, that is the 12, who are variously listed according to which account one is following. So the book of Acts is short for Acts of the Apostles. The apostles, or the 12 apostles, But really, the book of Acts is documenting Paul. Right? Who are variously listed according to which account one is following. And yet the author clearly knows almost nothing about the majority of these apostles. At a very early stage, the narrative moves over to the story of Paul, who was not really even an apostle at all, at least not one of the original ones. And except as he comes in contact with one or another of these, the narrative completely loses interest in them. Yeah, every time you run across a real apostle, he's staticking, or he got something bad to say, or he throwing him under the bus. For instance, we know next to nothing about Peter after he conveniently leaves just in time to make way for the introduction of James in chapter 12. We are told nothing about his travels or experiences, and nothing about his death. Why not? Why we don't know nothing about with Peter? That's where the Nazarene Acts come in, because that's all about his travels, all about his death, his martyrdom, all that, right? Documented by Clement, but Clement is Titus Flavius Clement. Damn Flavians again, boy. It's crazy. All right, now look at this. It says, and why not? We are not told about any of the other significant members of the 12 either, except James. And yet James is not supposed to be a member of the 12 or an apostle. But when it focuses on Paul, the text tells us nothing about his early career. Again, we can learn more by looking at the first chapter of Galatians. We would have expected to have been informed of these things. All the text does is bring us to Rome with Paul. Then it leaves us. We do not know what happened to Paul in the end any more than we do Peter or James for that matter. Acts is not history. Acts is not history. Dang. Acts is not history. It is not even particularly good narrative. It is not even particularly good narrative, romance or fiction. Nor does the text tell us about James's death, which following even Acts is somewhat questionable time format, also occurred at exactly the point Acts ends, about 2 years after. Dang, page 34. 2 years after Paul's arrival in Rome. A lacuna of this magnitude is inexplicable until one realizes Acts tells us about few, if any, of the other apostles, except who? Paul. Of these presumed 12 apostles, Acts mentions John, but in little or no detail, and has one small, more or less fictional episode about a Philip. Peter's discarded almost completely after Paul makes his appearance. The first James, the brother of John, is eliminated from the scene at this point as well, just in time for the sudden eruption of the second James, the brother of Yahshua, Jesus, into the narrative. Y'all understand it? You understand it? Look at this. In fact, just about all the other apostles that Acts so carefully lists at the beginning of its narrative are simply shadowy figures to flesh out the 12-man apostle scheme it is so intent on presenting. They are really only paper figures, and the author of Acts really knows next to nothing about them, or if he does, he is not very forthcoming concerning them. Indeed, it would be more accurate to say that Acts is really a narrative about the acts of the Holy Spirit, not the early church or apostles at all. It traces the acts of the Holy Spirit in their various manifestations, and true history goes by the board almost from the beginning. When Paul argues with the Jerusalem leadership of the church, which he does, it is the Holy Spirit that, in his view, gives him equal status, even superior knowledge to them. Galatians 2:2. Wow. It is the Holy Spirit that not only certifies his credentials as an apostle, but also his mission generally. Not unmindful of this fact, the religio-historical narrative of Acts is careful to present the accoutrements of the descent of the Holy Spirit, such as speaking in tongues and miracles, raisins, curings, and the like. Acts 2:4. James, the brother of Jesus, and James, the brother of John. You getting some understanding? Throw me an 8 up in the chat. Bless up. Bless up. Bless up. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, bang, bang. Oh, we already got 8s. It'll be 7s next time. The first reference to James in Acts comes in a request by Peter to the servants at Mary, the mother of John, Mark's house. Whoever these may have been after his escape from prison and before his departure to points unknown. It reads, report these things to James and the brothers. That's Acts 12 and 17. That's true. Peter gets miraculously let out of jail, and he was told to go check in. Go check in with James and the brethren. All right? Look at this. Now, why James? And this is after James, the brother of John, head was cut off by Herod. You see? Look at this. Before proceeding to the problems presented by it, we must first distinguish this James from several other Jameses, particularly the more familiar great James, or James, the brother of John, the son of Zebedee. This James is opposed presumably to James the Less. Mark 15 and 40, our James, and another justice who appears in Acts 1 and 23 is the James who occasionally appears along with James the Just, the brother of Jesus in the Gospels. He is the familiar James. He is the familiar James among the apostles, and the James most people think they are talking about when they speak of James. Few, if any, realize there was a second one even greater, and that the first is in all probability, if not merely a minor character, simply an overlay or gloss. The authors of Acts know nothing substantial about him and conveniently remove him at the beginning of chapter 12, just before the James we are speaking of appears. For his part, Paul never mentions a James, the brother of John, and none of the church fathers knows anything else about him except apocryphally. Yet his existence is confidentially asserted by almost all who talk with knowledge about Scripture. Such is the power of the written word. The same is true for his purported father, Zebedee, another character, again hardly more than simple fiction. For the present writer, characters of this kind are simply meant as dissimulation to confuse the unsuspecting reader. That's true. It is the brother thing. It is the brother thing, however, that will allow us to place in clear focus who this second James may have been. Once we have dismissed the nomenclature Zebedee as fiction, we will encounter several others of this kind. So by the end of the book, the modus operandi, the method of operation behind such overwrites, should become plain. Yeah, there are overwrites in the New Testament. Overwrites. Misdirection. James, the real James, is never introduced or identified in Acts. He just appears. Actually, he does not really appear here. This appearance is saved for chapter 15. He is alluded to parenthetically in Peter's request. Tell these things, that is Peter's miraculous escape, and page 35, and departure to James and the brothers, after the alleged other James has already disappeared from the narrative. But from what is said there, it is implied that our James, James the Just, was either mentioned earlier, or we should know who he is. But how should we know who he is if in the present version of the document he was not mentioned previously, or he was never introduced to us? Even this oblique mention of James after the only other James we have ever heard of has been decapitated does not tell us who he is. Either one is willing to accept that a character as important as James could be just introduced into the text of Acts at this point in such an offhand manner, or something is missing or has been discarded. He is obviously already the leader of the Jerusalem church and continues in this role for the rest of the book. The actual episode occurs just after Peter, who has been having visions via the mechanism of the Holy Spirit and experiencing voices crying out to him from heaven on the rooftop in Jaffa, goes to visit the household of a Roman centurion named Cornelius, Acts 9 and 11. All these episodes have as their root the admission of Gentiles or those who do not follow Hebrew law. the law of Moses into the church. Peter escaped from prison after having been arrested for some unexplained reason by who? Herod. The Herodians, the ops. All these points need exposition. We are in the thick of the Hebrew historical world in Jerusalem and along the seacoast of Palestine of the late 30s and early 40s. Give me a 7 if y'all getting some understanding. 30s and 40s of the Common Era, first century. That's what we dealing with. All right, that's what we dealing with. Oh, wait, oh, wait. Oh, wait, oh, wait. Hold on. About to go read about these boys. We're here to go read about the ops. Go read about these Herods. Go read about these boys. Rome's gatekeepers. Even to this day, boy, the small hats are very close with the Romans. And you wonder why. You be like, dang, why y'all don't hate the Romans like y'all hate the Nazis? I mean, more people died in the bang out with Rome than, you understand, than what happened with Nazi Germany. Not, not bigging up nothing or turning down nothing. I'm just saying, why don't Jews hate Romans? With all this, we finding out, why don't Jews hate Romans? Because the form of Judaism they practiced was allowed to continue. They don't practice the Torah observant messianic zealots who laid their life down for the cause. Right? They represent a passive. After their Rabbi Yohanan Bar Zakkai, he declared Vespasian along with Josephus. They both declared Vespasian Messiah. Said he fulfilled Numbers 24 and 17. Vespasian goes back to Rome and becomes Caesar. And later becomes deified as God by the Roman Senate. Making Titus who? His son. The who? The Son of God. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. That's what we dealing with here. That's what we dealing with here. Romans. Roman propaganda. Right? And we all are victims of that war from 2,000 years ago. Yeah, all of us are victims of that. All of us are. What survived? Paul's mission dealing with this Christianity vibration. I love to call it messianism. Messianism. You know what I mean? But that's Paul and his overseas. That's where you get Western Christianity. Right? Real messianism dropped in Palestine. Real Judaism, if you want to call it, dropped in Palestine. That's why the Dead Sea Scrolls are so important. Because they represent the literature of the brothers who didn't settle. Who didn't, who stood up against it. Hindsight 2020, we know now to get up out of there. Them the brothers that did not submit. All right, so they declared Vespasian as Messiah, and for that, Rabbi Yohanan Bar Zakkai was given universities. In Yavne, universities. And here comes the reteaching, the reformulation and the reteaching of the Torah. This is where you get rabbinical Judaism from. It's the Pharisees' understanding just carried over. And the literature that was fueling the war was downplayed. All right. And then you got, of course, Josephus is instrumental in the New Testament. Instrumental. Back in the medieval ages, you couldn't get a Bible that didn't have the complete works of Josephus in it. So what survived was the clowns that declared Caesar as God or as Messiah. That's what survived. The real ones dropped. Real ones dropped. You know what I mean? Or got up out of there. That's what happened. That's what we dealing with here. So when you can argue all day, messianic, non-messianic, both of y'all are the children of the niggas that sold out. When you done talking. Western Christianity or my Torah portions and Torah only, y'all both the children. Because had not Rabbi Yohanan Bar Zakkai told, he snuck about this. This nigga snuck out of Jerusalem in a casket. The bros, you understand, usually put the spirit through whatever go before they let anybody out the gates. But you know what I mean? They have, somehow they got past the Messianic zealots because they got to stab dude through. The zealots held the gate, so they end up letting this nigga out in the casket. And then he hop out the casket and tell Vespasian, you know, you Messiah. You fulfill our scriptures. And Josephus did the same thing. That's what you got. That's what survived. Passive Judaism and Paul's mission to the Gentiles or Western Christianity. That's what survived. The real everything else got put down. You know what I mean? And that's just the truth. Now look at this. The Herod, setting aside for the moment the actual historicity of this curious Peter or Simon involved in these kinds of activities along the Palestinian coast and who he might have been. Josephus would tell us about a parallel Simon, the head of an assembly. The head of a church, an assembly. First century, huh? The head of an assembly in Jerusalem in the same period, whom Herod would have very good cause, whom Herod would have had very good cause to arrest or execute. It would be important to grasp who all these characters designated in the New Testament as Herod the king actually were. Acts has this particular Herod beheading James, the brother of John, at the beginning of the chapter and dying eaten by worms at the end of chapter 12 and 23. He's saying Josephus talk about a Simon who was the head of an assembly in first century Jerusalem. What he was about. What he was about. And could the character of Simon Peter be based off him? The historical Simon. Curiously, the next chapter 13 is swinging back to Paul and describing the nature and composition of his Antioch church or assembly. Again, begins with a reference to another Herod the Tetrarch. This notice is referring to the prophets and teachers of the church in Antioch. Aside from Barnabas and Saul, these include someone referred to as Manaen. Trip off this. The foster brother of Herod the Tetrarch. Really? Really? Acts 13. Look at this. This is not the same Herod as in chapter 12. Whatever one might wish to say about him, the fact of a Herodian member of the founding community for Gentile Christianity in Antioch is embarrassing enough. Bag drop. Bag drop. Bag drop. Bag drop. Now flip over to Acts 13. Matter of fact, let's look at it. Let's go look at it. Let's see. Said, well, you got Manaen and Herod in your church. And remember, this is overseas. This ain't in Jerusalem. Yeah, man, Western Christianity is Paul's mission. It was a total different mission from the apostles. Total different mission. Oh, y'all see that? Acts 13:1. Now, there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas and Simeon that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene and Manaen, which had been brought up with who? Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. These are prophets and teachers in the church that Paul done set up out here in Antioch. And you mean to tell me you got a Manaen, which is like a foster brother to Herod? Herodians everywhere, man. Cats like roaches. Everywhere. Good night. Let's get back to it. Let's get back to it. Whatever one might wish to say about the fact of an Herodian member of the founding community for Gentile Christianity in Antioch is embarrassing enough. Ultimately, if one drops what is probably another nonsense name, Manaen, and transfers the descriptive phrase the foster brother of Herod, the tetrarch to Saul or Paul, one might have a more accurate description of the truth of the matter when speaking about this Herod, the tetrarch, though there can be little doubt that Acts means Herod Antipas, 7 CE to 39 CE. Antipas was one of the several Herods, sons of Herod the Great. By this time, the family was referring to its members much like all the Caesars, whom it was aping in more ways than one as Herods. This Herod, along with Herod Archelaus, 4 BC to 7 CE, whom we have already mentioned above in connection with the 4 before the Common Era disturbances and the census uprising, was the son of Herod's Samaritan wife. He is the Herod responsible for John the Baptist's death and the one King Artis in Transjordan went to war with because he had divorced his Aretas' daughter to marry Antipas, niece Herodias. He also appears in Luke interviewing Jesus. Herod the Great had numerous sons by some 9 or 10 different wives. Herod was out here, huh? Only a few of whom could by any yardstick be reckoned as Jewish. This will be an important problem. Page 36. Important problem, our period, not only as far as the Dead Sea Scrolls are concerned, but also for Jerusalem church. That is, who will be Jewish or Judean and what effect this perception was on the Judean masses. If we take the rabbinic delineation of this problem, the matrilineal yardstick, if your mother was Judean, then you were Judean. Herod did not have at least 2 Judean wives. Herod did have at least 2 Judean wives, both daughters of high priests and both called Miriam. Miriam or Mary. The first Miriam carried within her veins the last of the Maccabean priest line. On both sides of her family, she was of the blood of the heroic Maccabees, the Judean high priest line defunct after Herod. This in itself is a tragic enough story. Herod married her, seemingly by force, when he was besieging the temple in 37 BCE. Ultimately, he had her executed on the charge that she had been unfaithful with his brother, the original Joseph and Mary story, question mark. In time, Herod also executed his 2 sons by her, who had been educated in Rome, because he feared the Judean crowd would put them on the throne in his place. Herod was nuts, boy. Straight nuts. This nigga killed his woman and his children he fathered by her that were educated in Rome because he feared the Judean crowd would put them on the throne in his place, presumably because of their Maccabean blood, though not before they had reached majority and produced offspring of their own. In a similar manner, years before, he also had her brother, a youth named Jonathan Aristobulus in Greek. That is Aristobulus III. The Maccabees often combined Greek with Hebrew names. Killed. He also had her brother, a youth named Jonathan, killed. That's Aristobulus III. For the same reason, when he came of age and was able to don the high priestly robes. It was the assumption of the high priesthood by this Jonathan that probably explains Miriam's willingness to marry Herod in the first place. And one of the most tragic moments in Judean history, as we saw, Herod, like some modern Joseph Stalin or Adolf Hitler, had Jonathan drowned while frolicking in a pool at his winter palace outside Jericho. This after the Judean crowd wept when the boy donned the high priestly vestments of his ancestors. The time was 36 BCE, after Herod had assumed full power in Palestine under Roman sponsorship as a semi-independent king. He preferred manner of Roman government in that recently acquired part of their empire. Herod, not being of Judean blood or origins, might have been able to secure his kingship from the Romans and replacing the Maccabees as Judean kings, but he was unable to secure their high priesthood as well. However, he might have wanted it. There can be little doubt that in arranging the marriage with Herod, theoretically forbidden under Judean law, certainly as advocated by the Zealots, those left in the Maccabean family aspired to rescue whatever remained of the fortunes of their family after 30 years of civil strife. and war with Rome had destroyed it. Grateful to a fault, Herod proceeded to decimate the remainder of the Maccabean family, even that part of it that survived by subordinating itself to him and accommodating itself to Rome. First Jonathan, then Miriam herself. Though Josephus portrays Herod's soap opera style as being both in love and hating her at the same time. Then Hyrcanus II, Jonathan's grandfather from the generation of the 60s, when the fraternal strife that resulted in foreign occupation began. Herod wiped out almost the whole Maccabean family line, man. This would end up happening after, how we celebrate the Feast of Dedication, Judah Maccabee and his brother. The end result of all that, whole bloodline got wiped out. Whole bloodline got wiped out. Even those that submitted to Herod and Roman rulership got wiped out. Dang. So who were the priests in the New Testament in Yahshua's time? This Hyrcanus had been Judah Maccabee's great-grandnephew and had first introduced Herod's father, Antipater. Look at that. And had first introduced Herod's father, Antipater, to a position of power as his chief minister and go-between with the Romans and Arab Idumean power across the Jordan and in Petra. It was he who probably arranged Herod's marriage with Miriam in the first place. As noted above, Herod then executed his own 2 sons by her. Again, probably for the same reasons, because the crowd being nationalistic. That's important to understand. Right? The majority of our people, we were never anti-Israel or anti the nation. Never that. Being nationalistic and Maccabean in sentiment, preferred them to him. Finally, he executed Miriam's mother, dang, and Hyrcanus' daughter, dang, the wily old duwag of Salem, who was the last to go besides these. When Herod was done, there was no Maccabeans left, except third-generation claimants in his own family, whose blood had been severely cut by his own over 3 generations of cleverly crafted marriages. Ooh, wee. He wiped all that out, boy. Page 37. Give me a 6 up in the chat if y'all getting some understanding, family. Bless up. Bless up. Let me do something real quick. Let me see something. It's real quick, y'all. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Get some understanding. Bing, bing, bing. All right, give me 1 second, fam. All right, we're on page 37. The marriage policy of Herodians. Marriage policy of Herodians. The Herodians in the 3rd generation, the time of John the Baptist, descended from Herod and the last Maccabean princess Miriam, or 1/4 Judean. The other bloodline that flowed into them was carefully crafted and Idumean/Arab. Herod himself was primarily what today we call Arab in origin. In fact, his behavior, particularly where sexual mores and marital practices are concerned, is still very much that of what might be called a typical Middle Eastern chieftain or potentate. Herod pursued the policy of his descendants of descendants of niece marriage or marriage to close family relatives, usually cousins. This marital policy roundly condemned in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Remember that? This marital policy roundly condemned in the Dead Sea Scrolls to marry your cousins and your nieces and all that. That's showing you. But see, when you look at the story of Abraham and Sarah, she really was his niece, but he was allowed to marry her. And I'm only saying that because if you read the book of Jasher, okay, it further explains that wasn't his little sister, that was his niece. He married his brother's daughter that was 10 years younger than himself. His brother was like 30 years older than him, right? But it basically got in the Torah that a TT can't lay with her nephew, but an uncle can marry his niece. For instance, with Abraham and Sarah. I say, dang, that's crazy. But check it out, though. You know what I mean? But the Dead Sea Scrolls wasn't with that. The brothers out in the communities, they was largely, all the way against that. Showing you that everybody didn't interpret what they call the law or the Torah the same way. Look at this right here. It says, this marital policy roundly condemned in the Dead Sea Scrolls is probably the key datum of the kind we call internal, as opposed to external, for dating Qumran documents. So obsessed are the Qumran document with this kind of sexual and marital behavior that we have used this to insist that key documents making such complaints must be referring to an Herodian establishment. Robert Eisenman take it a step further. That further proves that the Dead Sea Scrolls is first century material. It's not second century during the time of the Maccabees, second century BCE. It's first century. He said the only reason they do that because of their carbon dating. But if you check the internal data of the scrolls, everything points to first century. Everything. Right? So must be referring to an Herodian establishment. There is no indication that Maccabeans previously, that is, before they were grafted to Herodians, indulged in this kind of behavior. And that's true. They were grafted into Herodians. That's crazy, man. He did a form of eugenics. Herod did a form of eugenics on himself and his family. He wiped out a bloodline and you know what I mean, did arranged marriages in a way to where that blood would be, diminished. Herod was a eugenicist. Wow. Wow, that's crazy. And the reason I'm saying is because I see this word grafted right here, right? It says that is before they were grafted to Herodians, indulged in this kind of behavior. For Herodians from 60 before the Common Era onwards, this kind of behavior considered incest at Qumran amongst the Dead Sea Scroll communities was a matter of actual family policy. This was incest where we from, right? This was a family policy for Herod and them. Was a matter of actual family policy, preserving their mastery in Palestine and elsewhere in Asia. It is this kind of sexual behavior that will provoke the ire of leaders, now considered Christian, such as John the Baptist against Herodians. The popular picture of a Salom dancing at Herod's birthday party. It's just scriptural tomfoolery. Although, as always in these instances, not without a seed of historical reality. In this case, the seed is the problem of Herodian family morals and their sexual practices that were objected to by all these messianic leaders, like John the Baptist, and after him, presumably, Yahshua, whoever he was. Look at this. The picture, therefore, that we have in the Gospels of a Jesus eating with tax collectors and sinners, or speaking favorably about harlots or prostitutes, is again just part of this casuistry. Herodian princesses, as we shall see, will be seen by the Judean nationalistic mass as nothing better than hoes. Like Bernice. Maybe I should play Bernice video they got out there. I'd seen the tape. What you talking about? I seen the tape of Bernice. What y'all talking about? Huh? Your cousin's a hoe. Y'all remember that? What is that on Players Club or your cousin's a hoe? Huh? That deal say. It says is again okay. It says Herodian princesses, as we shall see, will be seen by Judean national mass as nothing better than harlots, hoes, or prostitutes. Herodias is a case in point, but there will be others. And this issue, Zanot or fornication, dominates the mindset of those responsible for the Dead Sea Scrolls, as it does early New Testament documents like the letter of James. So much so as to appear like an obsession. We will also be able to show that other nationalist leaders like Simon, mentioned in Josephus above, the head of an assembly or church of his own in Jerusalem, will confront the Herodians in the Hellenistic center of Caesarea on the marital practices of Herodians, in particular, Herodian princesses. Ooh-wee. Yeah, them Herodian, well, them Kardashians, them ancient Kardashians, boy. Kim Kardashian and Khloe Kardashian, them Herodian hoes is them Kardashians. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. And this next generation, the fourth after the original, Herod in the 40s and 60s, Common Era, in the period James held sway in Jerusalem. The principal representatives of this line, now 1/8 Maccabean or Judean, are 3 Herodian princesses, 2 of whom make an appearance in chapters 24 to 26. Wow. The Book of Acts. Bernice. I seen the tape. I'm going to play Bernice for y'all later. I seen the tape. Your cousin's a hoe. Look at this. It says right here, Bernice and Drusilla. Both of these princesses have been divorced. Both ultimately took up with foreigners and deserted Judaism altogether. Bernice was not only divorced, she married her uncle as well. Your cousin's a hoe. Look at this. Herod of Chalcis, her father, Agrippa's brother. Agrippa II, her brother, who becomes king in the 50s and 60s, just preceding the uprising, also appears in Acts on her arm, chatting amicably with Paul in prison. Acts 25 and 13. This is perhaps the original for the intervening interview in the Gospels between Jesus and Herod the Tetrarch, Luke 23, 7-12, who really would have had no business in Jerusalem. His tetrarchy, literally his fourth of the kingdom, being in Galilee and across the Jordan in Perea, where John the Baptist was executed. Here it is possible to lay another sexual Moorish charge at the feet of these Herodian kings and princesses' incest. The basis in any event of the niece marriage charge, so striking in the scrolls. Niece marriage, on the other hand, has never been an infraction for Talmudic Judaism. Yeah, them ones that survived, you know, the ones that survived, you know what I'm talking about, rabbinical Judaism, they don't frown against that. They attempt to explain it, by using hermeneutics and exegesis and all this madness. You know what? The reason you come up those arts of interpreting scripture were invented is because they know what they're reading on surface level using basic comprehension contradicts in other places. So now you got to come up with a hermeneutics. Now you got to exegete it right. Because you know it's contradiction. The ability to interpret scripture, hermeneutics, and exegesis. You didn't exegete that right, Mally. Like, man, look, you ain't finna play me around her. You ain't finna play me with all your little technical terms and your conjugation of vowels. And if I exegeted a passage right, the only reason those type of skills even exist or that art exists is because what we're reading on surface level contradicts in other places. That's the only reason. On surface level, it makes no sense. Oh, wait. Niece marriage, on the other hand, has never been an infraction for Talmudic Judaism, nor is it in Judaism succeeding to it to this day. The scrolls also pointedly condemn. Hold on. See, that's not the real Judaism people following today. Over time, they doing their Torah portions and rolling their reshes. Torah. That ain't the real Judaism, if you want to call it that. Huh? That ain't the real Christianity, if you want to call it that. I don't even like calling it that. Thank you. I don't even like calling it that. You understand? They took the literature of the bros from back then and took a few sellout Negroes like Rabbi Yohanan Bar Zakkai and Flavius Josephus. You dig? And by the time the dust settled, your history is coming from overseas in a foreign tongue. Huh? By foreign scribes who know nothing about what you just went through. It's Flavian post-wartime literature. It's an attempt to pacify the zealot spirit that refused to submit to the Romans. And boy, oh boy, did it work. Flavius Josephus is largely instrumental in the New Testament. The Flavians, period. Huh? Rabbinical Judaism was birthed out of Phariseeism, and what it did was re-educate the masses of the Judeans that were throughout the Roman Empire in a passive way to be sympathetic toward Rome, not like who they call the religious rebels or the religious zealots, who end up being the messianic brothers and sisters who resisted. What you have today are both children of sellouts. So that argument, you can miss me with all that if you non-messianic or messianic, because guess what? It don't apply to me. My clan dropped back in Judea. We never made it out the borders. If we did, we moved out the way and went further east. Majority of my clan dropped within Judea. All right, well, everything you got came from overseas and was allowed to happen. They gave that boy yeshivas. They gave that boy universities. And you wonder why today, the small hats are gatekeepers to the Roman Empire to this very day. They're the gatekeepers to society to this very day. The small hats. And I might ask this question again. Why don't now a small hat hate Romans? Rome did you worse than Hitler. Rome did you worse than Hitler if you are those people. I'm just saying hypothetically. If you are the people who were in first century Palestine, then why don't none of y'all hate the Romans? The Romans did you worse than Hitler, if that hypothetically is you. Jewish folks don't even talk bad about the Romans. They don't talk bad about the Pope, none of that. They too busy trying to form some type of alliance so they can rebuild a third temple in Jerusalem, and they using the Pope to do it. The Pope has a castle in Jerusalem. The Pope has a castle in Jerusalem to this very day. What are we really talking about? You talking about you waiting for the Antichrist to go to Jerusalem. He already there, Jack. Ooh, him been there. Look at this. All right, what page am I on right here? 38. Back in 37. Hold on. The scrolls also pointedly condemn marriage with close family cousins on the basis of a generalization of the Deuteronomic law of incest. So the scrolls was against all that close marriaging with cousins and all that. Against all that, man. Call that incest. They did. Ooh-wee. And Josephus tells us that it was reputed that Bernice, I got the tape. I'm going to show y'all the tape. Just stick around to the end. I got the tape, nigga. Look at this. And look, she on there talking. It was reputed that Bernice actually had an incestuous relationship with her brother Agrippa II. But I can believe that. I can believe that. The picture in Acts does not gainsay this. In fact, to some extent, it reinforces it. Both Claudius and Caligula were reputed to be great friends of Agrippa I, who had been brought up with them in Augustus' imperial household in Rome after his father. The second of Miriam's two sons by Herod had been dispatched by him in 7 BCE. These third and fourth Julio Claudians restored the throne to this particular line, which had been denied Herod's descendants in the aftermath of the uprisings from 4 BC to 7 CE. Yeah, we stayed on Rome's neck. We stayed standing up. The period in which the Gospels date the birth of Jesus. Therefore, the various tetrarchs, ethnarchs, and governors in the period till Agrippa I's reemergence in 37, this was the line, of course, with the original Maccabean royal blood, which, however diluted, was obviously both meaningful and significant to the Romans. Dang, that's crazy. Herod the Great was a eugenicist. Wait. Agrippa I was restored to the throne of Palestine following the death of Tiberius, who had put him in prison because of his too friendly relations with Caligula and Claudius. Importantly, too, his restoration also followed the removal of Pontius Pilate from Palestine, after complaints like those of Philo's about his extreme venality and brutality. Pontius Pilate was a madman. In the year 37 CE, not long after the death of John the Baptist, according to the time frame of Josephus' Antiquities. In the previous generation, Herodias had first been married to one non-Maccabean uncle, supposedly named Philip in the New Testament, but actually named Herod. After divorcing him, she married another Herodian uncle, descended from a non-Maccabean Samaritan bloodline. This one, as we saw, Herod Antipas, 739 CE, was the Herod known as Herod the Tetrarch in the New Testament, Luke 3:19, Acts 13:1. And the individual both Josephus and the Gospels blame for the death of YAH'KI the Immerser, John the Baptist. For his part, John is pictured in the Gospels as objecting to Herodias' divorce and remarriage on the basis of an obscure point in Mosaic law, violating the law of levirate marriage, a point that might have appealed to someone taking his view of the Yahudim in Palestine from books Mark 6 and 17 and Pars. And those you're going to compare to it. It was permitted to marry one's brother's or half-brother's wife if that individual was childless, and one word, so to speak, raising up seed unto your brother, which will be counted for your brother's inheritance or posterity. For the New Testament, this was not the case, but there is nowhere any external proof of this. In fact, the New Testament has the situation totally wrong here. The man it is calling Philip is rather only called Herod and Josephus. Actually, he had at least one daughter by Herodias. The famous Shalom, though she is not identified by name in the New Testament, even though most people think she is. One has to go to Josephus for this. The Philip and Josephus is the tetrarch of Trachonitis in Syria, a little south of Damascus. He is not Shalom's father, but rather her husband. It is he, Josephus specifically remarks, who dies childless, making way for Shalom's next marriage to her mother's brother's son, Aristobulus. But the Gospels, as we presently have them, have conflated all these things. Yeah. Them dumped everything into one big pot of gumbo, producing what we today perceive as truth. So ingrained has this picture become that it is now automatic as well to speak of two Philips, and this Herod is Herod Philip. Exactly. Look at this. Actually, however, to the non-Roman, non-Hellenistic native eye, there were all these other sexual and marital infractions sufficient to explain John's objections to Herodias. In particular, her relations with not one uncle, but two. Them Herodian princesses were the Kardashians of first century. Straight up. And her self-divorce with even Josephus admits violated the laws of our country. This is the kind of divorce the Dead Sea Scrolls so protest against, and no doubt John the Baptist as well. Further proof that the Dead Sea Scrolls are first century Judaism or first century Messianic movement coming out of Palestine. Look at this right here. It says right here, it would be legitimate to query at this point why among all these Herodian progeny and the Herodian family was beginning to resemble a vast network like some royal families in the Middle East in our time. Was Herodias so desirable that two uncles were intent, look at this, were intent on having her, even to the extent of shedding John's blood and fighting a war with the Arabian king Aretas of Petra because of her. Straight up, man. So, remind you of what's her name? Helen of Sparta or Greece, whatever her name is. It is. The answer is twofold. The answer is twofold. The first, that of all the various Herodian lines, this Maccabean one was the richest. A factor highlighted by the wealth that came to her brother Agrippa after his appointment as actual king by his boon companion Caligula. Josephus specifically calls Agrippa's first daughter Bernice one of the richest women in Palestine, and Herodias probably was not far behind her where this was concerned. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. This is another important theme in our text, the polluted evil riches of the establishment. The Dead Sea Scrolls talk about the polluted evil riches of the establishment. Are you serious? A theme along with fornication, which is again paramount in both the scrolls and the letter of James. It is also prominent in the Gospels and in Josephus, all purporting to be first century texts. This is certainly the principal reason behind Herodias' attractiveness to less fortunate collateral Herodian lines, such as those of Herod in the Gospels, Philip, the son of Herod's second wife by the name of Miriam, and Antipas, only the son of his Samaritan wife. It was also no doubt an important reason for the involvement of the future Roman Emperor Titus with who? Bernice. Your cousin's a hoe. Your cousin's a hoe. Oh man, hopefully this ain't going out. And we got the tape. I'm gonna show it later. I ain't glitching out at my family. Let me know. Give me a 5-minute chat if I can be heard. Give me a 5-minute chat if I can be heard. Let me see. Okay, I can't be heard. Go. All right, look at it. All right, it says right here. It was also no doubt an important reason for the involvement of the future Roman Emperor Titus with Bernice, Herodias' niece, as it no doubt was a century before for the various parvenu paramours of Cleopatra. Cleopatra was a hoe too. The salute to the Ptolemy, the Seleucid princess, dealt with Ptolemy and him and Mark Antony. A paramour means a lover or a concubine. See that? It is. But there is a second reason as well, royal blood. In Cleopatra's case, stemming from those connected to Alexander the Great. And Herodias' the blood of the Maccabees in her veins. Apart from her riches, this is sufficient to explain all this interest in developing a progeny-bearing relationship with her. But John the Baptist certainly would have had quite a few other objections besides riches that would have met the Qumran criteria for condemnation as unlawful, Matthew 14:4. Where fornication was concerned, divorce, polygamy, niece marriage, and incest, including the marriage of close cousins, and the Herodian family could certainly be accused of practicing most, or, drum roll, all of these. All of these. When the letter of James objects to fornication, all of these aspects of what was considered fornication in this period by documents like the Dead Sea Scrolls should be uppermost in the reader's mind. Where, of course, those with royal blood are concerned, The temple scroll, drawn on the Deuteronomic king law, adds another: marriage to a foreigner. Marriage to a foreigner, insisting that the king should marry once and only once in the lifetime of his wife, and this only to a Judean woman. That's in the temple scroll in the Dead Sea Scrolls. See, so not only were there foreign kings and priests in first century Palestine, you dig, the behavior was off. The behavior was off. You dig? It is interesting that for Matthew 21:32, John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. Note the Pauline thruster, but the tax collectors and the hoes believed him, the harlots. The way of righteousness is, of course, a favorite Qumranism, but the true situation as far as John is concerned is rather the opposite. Aside from the joke of having the harlots believing John, not to mention the travesty, if one understands that at this point the Roman tax collectors in Palestine were the who? Drum roll. The Herodians. Man. So all that pay your taxes and all that he talking about, man, the tax collectors are the Herodians. You better go pay Herod. Then the farcical thrust of this saying ascribed to Jesus is this supposedly most Judean of all the Gospels is actually quite amusing. Those who inserted it into the Judean Messiah's mouth no doubt had a most macabre sense of humor. The saying of Yahshua from the Clementine homilies about being able to detect false coin from true begins to develop the force of a hammer-like blow. Yeah, he told the apostles in the Nazarene Acts that you got to become excellent money changers or bankers. Why? Because a money changer has developed an eye to tell the difference between what's counterfeit and what's real. And we got to do that with the scriptures. Everything in there that even if it's in red letter, everything in there was not said by who we call Yahshua. The truth. James, the brother of John. James, the brother of John, and Theudas. Either Agrippa the first, then, or his brother Herod of Chalcis would appear to be the Herod, the king of Acts betrayed and stretching forth his hands to ill-treat some of those of the assembly of the church. Acts 12:1. In the very next sentence in Acts, this Herod the king puts James, the brother of John, to death with the sword, leading up to James's first appearance just a few lines further in the text in the same chapter. This beheading, which is what is meant by putting to death with the sword, parallels one mentioned in Josephus already alluded to somewhat obliquely in Acts 5:36, page 40. In Acts 5:36, execution of Theudas. This was in the course of the suppression of these various seditious and charismatic leaders and messianic pretenders that Josephus considers so dangerous. In fact, Acts 5:36 uses the same Greek word for put to death and referring to him as Acts 12:2 uses in referring to the beheading of James, the brother of John. If one looks at the Talmudic enumerations of the various Jewish kinds of execution of this period found in Tractate Sanhedrin of the Mishnah, one will find that beheading was applied in Judean religious law to cases of subversion, treachery, insurrectionary activities. Wow. Did they just pass a law against us? See? Wow. Or the like. Some of the other kinds of execution described in Sanhedrin are quite gruesome, including pouring rocks down on someone or forcing burning pitch down his throat. But however tenditious Talmudic materials can sometimes be, crucifixion was not one of them. In fact, crucifixion or its Judean equivalent, hanging upon a tree, was quite specifically forbidden under Judean law, Deuteronomy 21:23. We on page 40, chapter 6, the first appearance of James, the brother of Jesus, in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We getting some understanding up in this deal, boy. We cooking. Cooking, we cooking, we cooking. All praise to the Creator. Water, fire. For his part, Josephus mentions, okay, let's read that then. Nope. For his part, Josephus mentions at least 4 important beheadings in this period, from the time of the Maccabees to the fall of the temple. The first 2 are Maccabeans trying to regain their kingdom following Herod's takeover in 37 BCE. Both sons of Aristobulus II. The other 2 are Herod the Tetrarch's beheading of John the Baptist and the beheading of Theudas in the period of Herod of Chalcis and the Roman governor of Fadus, 45 CE. Apart from the impersonal mass of crucifixions by the Romans up to the fall of the temple, Josephus mentions 2 that stand out. Jesus's, if not an interpolation, and that of James and Simon, the two sons of Judah, the Galilean. Another brother from the 1st century. Salute. Freedom fighter. The 2 sons of Yahudah, the Galilean, the founder of the Zealot movement, who were executed a year or 2 after Theudas. Of stonings, Josephus really only mentions those of Honi or Onias the Righteous just before the Romans first assaulted the temple in 63 before the Common Era. That was Pompey. That was the Roman general Pompey that sacked Jerusalem in 63. Presaging Aristobulus II's downfall, James in 62 CE and another son or grandson of Judah, Yehuda the Galilean, 1 Manichaean in the events surrounding the outbreak of the uprising in 66 CE. Purely as these authors in the Roman period often were, had there been others, Josephus probably could not have resisted telling us about them. But James, the brother of John in Acts, and Theudas in Antiquities are executed around the same time by either the same individual or set of individuals, and regardless of Acts' agenda, one will presume or assume for similar reasons. As we saw, Acts 5 and 36 uses the very same Greek allusion, put to death, in referring to Theudas' execution, as Acts 12 and 2 does, and referring to James, the brother of John. Theudas, an otherwise unknown individual. Theudas is an otherwise unknown individual. The reference to his execution in a speech put in the mouth of Paul's Pharisee teacher Gamaliel gives rise to the well-known anachronism in Acts 5. This, in turn, is tied to another deletion or oversight, the crucifixion of Yahudah, the Galilean's 2 sons, James and Simon, which follows almost directly thereafter in Josephus' Antiquities. In Gamaliel's speech, Theudas is represented as somehow being related to the activities of Judah the Galilean, but arriving on the scene before him. Judah the Galilean seems to have flourished from around the time of Herod's death in 4 BC to 7 CE, the time of the tax uprising that brought Herod's son Archelaus' crisis-ridden reign to an end. With the banishment of Archelaus, the Romans imposed direct rule via governors who were obedient and answerable to the emperor and senate until the time of Agrippa I emerges in 37 CE. The period in between not only turns out to be a period when we have a paucity of historical data compared to the ones just preceding and following it, but also the time identified by most as precisely that of Jesus' lifetime. As the author of the book of Acts has Gamaliel euphemistically described Judas the Galilean's death. After this one Theudas, Judas the Galilean arose in the days of the census and led many people astray. He perished, and all of them scattered. But neither he nor Josephus tells us how or under what circumstances. Rather, Josephus in the Antiquities again turns to the subject of Judah the Galilean when discussing the execution of James and Simon, the sons of Judas, the Galilean, who caused the people to revolt when Cyrenius came to take an accounting of their states of the Jews. This will make James and Simon quite old, since as he described it, their crucifixion appears to take place coincident with the famine, 46 to 48 CE. Antiquity of the Jews, book 20, sections 101 through 102. The census of Cyrenius and the sex of the Jews. And the census of Cyrenius is interesting because that's when Luke, the 2nd chapter, 1 through 4, takes place. And that's supposed to be when the Messiah, Jesus, or Yahshua was born. But the census of Cyrenius takes place in 6 CE. Matthew chapter 2 says that Jesus was born during the days of Herod the Great. Right? But Herod the Great, thank you. Herod the Great died in 4 BC. 4 BC. So either Messiah was born during the days of Herod the Great, or he's born during the days when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. But Herod never made it to the days of when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. So you got the Messiah being birthed at 2 different times in the Gospels. Matthew chapter 2, 1 through 4. And then all the way down to verse 14, skip down to verse 14, you see Herod died. Every scholar tell you that's 4 BC. 4 BCE. All right. Then you got Luke chapter 2, 1 through 4. And in the days of Augustus, he caused the world to be taxed, and this taxing went down when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. Well, he was governor of Syria in 6 CE, which is a whole decade after the death of Herod. So either the Messiah, Jesus, Yeshua, was born during the days of Herod or during the days of Cyrenius when he was governor of Syria. But it can't be both. You see that? People still stumbling over that, talking crazy. Look at this right here. The census of Cyrenius imposed after a series of uprisings led by Yehudah and other messianic leaders with Archelaus. 4 BCE to 7 CE was unable to control. Is the event seized on as well by the author of Luke. The author also accredited with Acts to fix the date of Jesus' birth. Wow. To fix the date of Jesus' birth. This, of course, makes the birth of Jesus coincident with the birth of sectarian strife, generally in particular, what Josephus is calling the birth of the Zealot movement, and what we would call the Messianic movement, though the point of Luke's approach is to get Jesus to Bethlehem to be born. So much does it fly in the face of the parallel one in Matthew that nothing of certainty can be said with regard to Jesus' birth at all. Neither the place, the date, nor the political and social circumstances. Why did he say the one in Matthew? Because the one in Matthew was when Herod was alive, Herod the Great. You have 2 different times when Christ is born. Or you got to come on outside and call it a contradiction. You can't have both. He can't be born during the days of Herod the Great and when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. One bro say, man, the truth lies in the fact when was Augustus Caesar? From 27 BCE to 14 CE, which would have been during the time when Cyrenius was governor over Syria. But it would not have been if it was past, since it was past 4 BC, it was not during the times of Herod. Yeah, Augustus and Herod ruled during some of the same time periods, but Herod died in 4 BCE. Augustus kept living to 14 CE, 18 years later. You see? So that's not a point anybody making. They saying, well, Augustus was ruling during the time Herod was ruling. Yeah, all the way up until Herod died in 4 BC. Augustus didn't die till 14 or 18 years later. So that's not a point either. You know what I mean? That's not a point either. Look at this right here. It says right here. For Luke, if not Matthew, Jesus' parents are already living in Galilee. But since David came from Bethlehem, in his view, Jesus should be born there as well. Perhaps this was the popular religion, but there is no known prophecy specifically delineating such a requirement. In fact, further information regarding this requirement in John 7:42 has the crowd doubting Jesus' Bethlehem birth and therefore specifically denying that he comes from there. However this may be, the Lucan author uses the patently artificial stratagem of a Roman-imposed census to get Jesus' family back to Bethlehem from Galilee, and to develop his very popular no room at the inn scenario. As a result, the Christ child, just like the Oriental mystery religion, God Mithra before him, is born in a manger. Bag drop. A favorite biblical folktale without any historical substance whatsoever. Mithra was born in a manger too. But the census of Cyrene referred to by Luke, both in his gospel and Acts, does have substance. Cyrenius was governor of Syria, to whom the task fell to take an evaluation of the property of Palestine for taxation purposes in advance of the imposition of direct Roman rule following the removal of the inept Archelaus. That was a Herod. That was a Herodian. Josephus refers to this on 3 occasions in his works. The last, as we saw when discussing the execution of James and Simon, the 2 sons of Yahudah the Galilean in the Antiquities. It is this execution in the year 48 of the Common Era that explains the anachronism in the speech attributed to Gamaliel in Acts. Better still would be to Josephus. Once one realizes that Acts' author, like many a Roman historian thereafter, Acts' author, like many a Roman historian thereafter, was dependent on the latter. Not to mention a few other sources. Wow. Dependent on Josephus. Wow. The author of Acts was dependent on Josephus. Wow. The sequence in Acts 5:36-37 of Theudas, his revolt, Yehudah the Galilean, and the census would follow that of Josephus in the Antiquities precisely. If we simply assume that Luke has, for some reason, left out the mention of the execution of Yehudah the Galilean's 2 sons, James and Simon, this will restore the proper chronological sequence into the text and give us the mention of Theudas, followed by the mention of the execution of Yahudah the Galilean's 2 sons, followed by the explanation of who Judas was, namely that he perished in the census uprising. We didn't want to be taxed by Rome, so we had an uprising. And it was led by Yahudah the Galilean. As far as Jesus' birth is concerned, it is totally irrelevant to the census, except perhaps symbolically. And Luke's story connecting the 2 fictional in any event. Even Acts orders as it currently stands follows Josephus exactly. The only thing lacking being a few minor details that have dropped out or been deleted in the process of transmission or rewriting. While the author left out the crucifixion of Yehudah the Galilean's 2 sons in the first place, we shall most likely never know. Wait. Look at this. Bottom of page 41. What is interesting, though, is that Josephus uses the uprising led by Yehudah the Galilean as the springboard to describe the Judean sects in the 1st century. Wow. Josephus uses the uprising led by Yehudah the Galilean as the springboard to describe the Judean sects in the 1st century in both the war and the antiquities. It is edifying to compare the 2 descriptions of these sects found in them. Page 42. And the earlier one triggered by the appearance of Judah the Galilean and the mention of the imposition of direct Roman rule through a governor who had the power to impose the death sentence. Josephus describes the normal 3 sects: Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. Pharisees, them sad niggas you see in the scenes, and lingers in loving detail over the last, a group he was evidently well acquainted with, talking about the Essenes. He also describes the 4th group, owing its origins to the activities of Yehudah the Galilean. And the teacher he identifies only by the puzzling sobriquet Sadak, Obviously, it is in order to describe this false philosophy of Judas the Galilean that he launches into his discussion of the sex at this point in the Jewish war and the Judean war. But though he promises to tell us about this group, he does not. Rather, he lingers over the Essenes in loving detail. His descriptions of both Sadducees and Pharisees are cursory in the extreme, though they too have been picked up in the New Testament and used to characterize these groups. In the Antiquities, however, he makes good the omission describing the ills associated with the movement led by Judas and Zadok in great detail. This movement, according to him, led our people to destruction because our young people were zealous for it. Antiquity 18:10. As we have suggested, there can be little doubt that what he is describing is the Messianic movement in Palestine. Others might call it the Zealot movement, but Josephus never uses this terminology until after the uprising and the killing of all the high priests, particularly James's destroyer Annas in 68 CE. In fact, he never names it at all except tantalizingly as the fourth philosophy. What he does do, however, is sharply curtail his description of the Essenes and the war and take part of it and add it to his descriptions of the movement initiated by Yehudah and Zadok in the Antiquities. This is the moment Luke chooses to date the birth of Christ, in line with his establishment sensibilities and pro-Roman sympathies. Josephus rails against the leaders of movements such as this, as we saw too, as imposters and deceivers, worse even than the bandits and murderers that infested the country in this period. Worse because not only did they deceive the people, but they strove to bring about religious innovation and revolutionary change. Look at Josephus. But he was a leader. He was a commando. How he gonna talk against the brothers? He was a commando. Most often, these disturbances took place at Passover time, probably because this could be looked upon as the Judean National Liberation Festival, when Moses led the ragtag group of former Judean slaves out into the wilderness and not only gave them freedom and the law, but produced a nation. Give me a 4 up in the chat if you're getting some understanding, family. We got a little bit more and we up out of here. I wanted to come on and chop it up with the fam. You know what I mean? Now we good. I want to make sure we good. Judas, the brother of James and Theudas. It is precisely in this manner that Josephus describes disapprovingly, of course, the Theudases whose death parallels that of James, the brother of John, in Acts 12, calling him an impostor in the sense of being a false prophet or deceiver. Josephus insists that he actually claimed to be a prophet and a miracle worker, and on this basis persuaded many, and important uses in the Dead Sea Scrolls, to follow him out into the wilderness, where he said he would part the Jordan River. In the book of Joshua, Joshua is described as parting the Jordan River, just as Moses parted the Red Sea, when he led the people of Israel into the promised land, dry shod, Joshua 3:13. Evidently meant to be a Joshua, that's Latin, redivivus, a Joshua brought back to life, or a Joshua incarnated. Theudas is reversing this and leading the people back out into the wilderness. When one appreciates that the name Jesus is a Hellenized version. Jesus is a Hellenized version of the name Joshua, he who saves, then one can appreciate that Theudas is a Jesus redivivus as well, or a Jesus brought back to life. Jesus goes out into the wilderness to confront the devil or multiply loaves. Theudas to part the Jordan River in reverse. For his troubles, his followers were decimated by Roman soldiers, and he was beheaded. Good night. The name Theudas is a mystery. In Greek, the only form in which we have it, it resembles the name Judas. In our view, it is also a parallel to that character who in two apostles list is called Thaddeus. How many of y'all know there was an apostle named Theudas or Thaddeus? If you did, why you never bring him up? Compare the apostles list in Matthew and Luke. It'll blow your mind. It's not even the same names. Some of the names are the same, but there are different names. So if somebody told you, or if I challenge anybody on here that's listening to produce me an authentic apostles list, like who are the 12 apostles? And you get the name, and then I pull up an accountant Luke and an accountant Matthew, and we put them side by side, and we see, guess what we find out? We find out that some of the names are different. Could this Theudas be Thaddeus? Apostles list is called Thaddeus. This character would turn out sometimes to be called Judas of James, or Judas, the brother of James. And as we shall further develop below, we would identify him as the third brother of Yahshua. Bag drop, boy. You know, one of the subtitles of this book is Jesus' brothers as apostles. Probably the person other sources called Judas Thomas. The claim implicit in the name Judas Thomas is that he is a twin, Thoma, in Aramaic meaning twin. The implication usually is that he is a twin of Jesus, his third brother, Jude or Judas. We would go further considering Theudas to be either a garbled form or conflation, contraction of the two names Judas and Thomas. Yeah, I can see that. Judas and Thomas put together, Theudas. Wow. Wow. Let's let that sink in for a minute. For the purposes of the argument, or discussion, let us assume this to be the case. One can now see the importance of the brother theme in the book of Acts. Only this time we are not dealing with a brother of John or even another James, but rather the third brother of Yahshua. That is Yahudah, Judas, the brother of James. There is a book of Jude, ain't it? Seen heard by the text as Joshua or Jesus, Redivives, brought back to life again. The theme of beheading and the chronology are approximately right. We are somewhere in the period of Agrippa I or Herod of Chalcis, around 44 to 45 CE. Look at this. Let us also, for the purposes of argument, assume that James is the so-called son of Zebedee is an editorial gloss. Not only does Acts necessarily have to remove him at this point in order to make way for the appearance of James the Just, the brother of Yeshua, the real James, but what we have here in Acts are the faint traces of the real event just beneath the surface of the fictional one. A lot of overwrites going on, y'all. To put this another way, there was another brother of Jesus called Jude or Judas. In some texts, this brother is alluded to as Judas Thomas, either evoking an actual twinship or the Joshua/Jesus Redivivis theme brought back to life of Josephus' narrative. And there really was a brother eliminated at this time. But this brother was not James, the brother of John, but the lesser known, but probably more real Judas of James. Jude, the brother of James. You had a book before Revelations. Referred to in the letter by that name. That such a brother really did exist and produce offspring continuing down to the period of Vespasian, Domitian, and Trajan is also confirmed for us in Eusebius. You mean tell me Messiah got bloodline out here, boy? What you really talking about? Messiah got bloodline out here. And you got your church historians confirming it. That's cold. That's crazy. That's crazy. Using a Gesapis, Eusebius refers to the offspring of one Judas called the brother of our Lord. The brother of our Lord, according to the flesh. One in the time of Domitian and one right before he describes the martyrdom of Simeon Bar Cleophas, the cousin of our Lord in Trajan's time. At this point, Eusebius acknowledges that Simeon's mother was Mary and his father Cleophas, quoting scripture. Still, he cannot yet bring himself to admit that Simeon was a brother too. That is, Jesus' second brother Simon, but rather only of the family or the relatives of Jesus. Yeah. All right, man, let's go pull the list of Jesus or Yahshua's brothers real quick. We'll come back to that. Let's show that. We don't want nobody to think we playing around here. Don't want nobody to think we playing. All right, I'll show that real quick. I'll go show that real quick. Somebody better tell these young boys that I do's this. All praise to the Creator. Believe that, know that. All right, first we're going to go to Matthew. Let's show. We pull the receipts out. Pull the receipts out. Yep, Keon Cooper, you just got to search for yourself, man. What make most sense to you? Not why people scared to use common sense. But that's what the Creator gave you. He gave you common sense. Search it out. Try the spirit. Scrutinize everything. Matthew 13, 53 to 55. And it came to pass that when Yahshua had finished these parables, he departed thence. And when he was coming to his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, and so much that they were astonished and said, whence hath this man this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this who? The carpenter's son. Is not his mother called Mary, and his brethren, James, Joseph, Simon, Judas, or Judah, Yahudah. The family was 5 brothers and 2 sisters. There go James. We've been talking about James all day. Right now, we're talking about Thudas or Yahudah or Jude, the brother of James, which would make him the brother of Yahshua as well. And we also brought up a Simon. We say Simeon Bar, Cleophas. And they'd be like, well, that was his cousin. But the position of this book is that's an overwrite. No, that's another brother. So we got 1 brother, 2 brothers, at least 3 brothers that's apostles. And Joseph is another way to say Joseph. Oh, there it is right there. There it is right there. May have been a caliphate. Caliphate means that family rules the movement. So after Yahshua, you get James. The James, you get Simeon Bar, and on down the line. All right. Let's get another witness. Somebody talking crazy, man. Hold on, Ak. Somebody spilling their coffee. Hold on, Ak. Shout out to the haters, y'all jackers and naysayers. Yeah. We love y'all too. Bless up. Mark 6 and 3. It's not just the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and of Yahudah, Jude, and Simon. Not his sisters here with us. They were offended at him. Dang, you see that? You see that? Dang, that's crazy. It's family, bro. Then you look up and then it's a lot of overwrites in the Gospels. You get Judas the betrayer. Nigga like, dang, man. Dang. All right, here we go. So if you understand that the names that Robert Eisman is throwing off in his book, like James, like Judah or Yahudah or Judas, you dig? Like Simon, all these are actual names of the Messiah or Yahshua's brothers, his biological brothers. If you understand that, give me a 3 up in the chat. I want to make sure everybody good, man. Yeah, I want to make sure everybody good. You speaking about brothers. Okay, we got 3s. Okay, let's keep going. Read that again. Still, he cannot yet bring himself to admit that Simeon was a brother too. That is Yahshua's second brother, Simon, but rather only of the family or the relatives of Yahshua. By the 90s, these descendants of Yahshua's third brother, Judas, are only simple farmers. Eusebius reports that Domitian, 81 through 96, that's a Flavian, like his father Vespasian before him, attempted to round up all those people considered to be of the genealogy of David. Yeah, before the fall of Jerusalem. He tried to kill all the messianic brothers that came from the bloodline. They were rightful heirs to David's seat. Domitian tried the same thing. Vespasian tried it before Jerusalem fell. I mean, it was hunting us. Yeah, I feel you, Keon Cooper. That's to me, the death of Yahshua and Owaspi make more sense because our people were stoning. That's a Hebrew, death sentence right there. They did. But look at this right here. So try to round up all those people considered to be of the genealogy of David. Among these were the grandchildren of who? Judas. We ain't talking about Judas Iscariot. We talking about Jude, the brother of James, was making the brother of Jesus, Yahshua. The book of Jude right before Revelations. That's Yahshua's brother. Among these were the grandchildren of Judas. When questioned about the nature of Christ and his kingdom, they replied it was not an earthly one, but celestial and angelic. But that at the end of the world, he, the Messiah, would appear to give to everyone according to his works. Thereupon, Domitian purportedly dismissed them as simpletons. They were reported to have continued living until the time of Trajan, 98 through 117. There is one more link in this chain, and that comes in the documents from Nag Hammadi. Nag Hammadi scrolls, right? Here, in two previously unknown apocalypses attributed to the person of James, an individual named a day, again, obviously linked etymologically to the name Thaddeus, is referred to as well as other Thuda, paralleling him, referring to as the father or brother of the just one, that is Yahshua, or even possibly James. We believe this also to be the implication of the author of the book of Acts. Once one begins to appreciate Acts' working method and its evasiveness, much else becomes clear in the early history of Christianity. Page 44. Let's get it. We almost done, family. First appearance of James. See, we ain't in here just throwing something out there and just leaving you on the cliff. No. We showing you the history behind it, the research. You understand? And just to be real, had I been first century, I'd have been banging with the bros. That's me. That's just me. You know what I mean? But hindsight 2020, knowing what I know now, no. When an empire comes against you that's stronger than you and all that, it's time to pack up and get out the way. You don't submit to them, and you don't stay and resist. Get out the way, and we go turn a desert land into an oasis, into a land flowing with milk and honey, and we continue to serve Creator. See what I'm saying? But if I'm with you, I'm with you. I'd have been in that one. I'd have been all in that one. Because I'm not, you dig? I'm not about to walk around and look at naked statues of Caesar. I'm not with all that. You dig? So salute the freedom fighters, the Messianic freedom fighters, man. You dig? I sympathize with that movement. Like I said earlier, I am sympathetic toward it. Had I been 2,000 years ago, I'd have been banging shoulder to shoulder with the brothers. You know what I mean? But again, hindsight 2020, we understand that this is the Creator's earth, his creation, his land. Guess what I can't do? I can't sell it nor spill blood over it. I'm going to get out your way. We're going to move on and keep serving Creator how we know we're supposed to serve Creator, by doing righteous works unto others. You understand? Coming up with solutions to cure society's ills, poverty, crime, We into our science, we into our heavens, we into all that. We into anatomy, biology, we into all that. You know what I mean? Oh, wait. All right, let's get it. First appearance of James. Acts portrays these kinds of seditious or subversive events, which led up to the first appearance of James in Acts 12 and 17, as occurring during the days of the unleavened bread, that is Passover time. Herod, who at this point beheads James, the brother of John, goes on to imprison Peter. Because of the beheading of this other James, so pleased the Yahudim, intending to put him on trial at the end of the Passover week. This is the kind of tendentious aside. This is the kind of tendentious aside that so characterizes Acts in the Gospels. In any event, Acts goes on to describe a miraculous escape by Peter from prison with the help of an angel. Acts 12, 5 through 10. This escape has interesting parallels with one later offered Paul, Acts 16, 25 to 34. In this later episode, calculated to show the moral superiority of the apostle to the Gentiles over this archetypically Jewish apostle, Paul refuses to escape out of concern for the welfare of the guards, mindful of the fact that earlier those designated to guard Peter were executed after he escaped, Acts 12 and 19. However this may be, Peter's escape is used to explain why he no longer functions in Palestine or in Jerusalem. He is forced to flee, but not before James is at last introduced in Acts 12 and 17. And Peter goes to a house in Jerusalem to inform him of his departure. This at least might bear some semblance of the truth. Wait. The chapter ends with the death of this Herod, normally taken to be the death of Agrippa I in 44, Acts 12, 20 to 23. The indications are that because of Agrippa I's growing imperial ambitions in the east, which are unacceptable, his Roman overlords arranged to have him poisoned. Josephus portrays Agrippa much like his patron Caligula, collapsing in a seizure while dressed in gold leaf, presumably like Apollo or the sun, and given a theatrical performance of some kind. Antiquity 19, 343 to 352. Acts portrays him being struck down by an angel because he looked so magnificent that people mistook him for a god. The house in Jerusalem where Peter goes to leave a message for James and the brothers is pictured as being that of Mary, mother of John, who is mentioned again in Acts as the man who deserted the mission of Barnabas and Paul in Pamphylia, Acts 15, 37 through 39. In Acts 13 and 13, he is simply called John, and there is no hint of the bitterness evinced by Paul towards him in Acts 15 and 39. Elsewhere, he would appear to be identified with the Gospel of Mark, and Eusebius knows him as Peter's traveling companion. We were not aware that he had a mother called Mary, nor that he had a house in Jerusalem in which Mary lived. Plus, it would seem not a little strange to go to a house where Mary, mother of John Mark, lived to leave a message for James, the brother of Jesus, and the other brothers. It is simpler just to think that the text originally said the house of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Absolutely. Absolutely. Or Mary, the mother of James the just. Or Mary, the wife of Cleophas. And that this somewhat enigmatic substitution is taking place. And so it has remained to be enshrined in 17th, 18th centuries of pious history. Look at this. But it will not stand up to investigation. It will not stand up to investigation. One can simply dismiss it as either pious fiction or look at it more deeply and attempt to make out the main lines of the original. We prefer the latter, and we do so on the basis of what seems the simplest and most reasonable under the circumstances. Acts is not simply pure fiction. There is real truth lying behind its substitutions or overwrites. And the key often is the family of Yeshua, in particular James, and how they are treated. Here it is useful to observe that after the attack on James by Paul in the Nazarene Acts, or the pseudo-Clementine recognitions, James is actually carried to his house in Jerusalem. In the same vein, in the Gospel of John, Jesus instructs a disciple he loved, always unidentified, from the cross, no less, to take Mary into his own house, his own home, obviously in Jerusalem, and be her son Matthew 19, 26 to 27. This is just following the passage in which Mary is identified as the sister of his mother Mary, wife of Clopas, 1925. This is precisely how this phrase appears in the Greek. The reference in Acts 12 and 17 to brothers is interesting as well. One can take these brothers as brothers in the generic sense, that is communal brothers, or the like, which is page 45. Or the like, which is how it is usually taken. Or since we are following the traces of the brothers in this work, it's possible to take them as brothers in the specific sense, meaning James and the other brothers of Jesus. The first is more likely, but one should always keep in mind the possibility of the second, since Peter has gone to Mary, the mother of someone's house, to leave a message for James and the brothers, otherwise unexplained. Absolutely. Absolutely. These kinds of persecutions, too, we can take as authentic. Individuals like Theudas or Judas, Jesus' brother, really did lose their lives. But in Acts betrayal, the reason for these persecutions became rather distorted. For instance, in Acts, the Judean crowd is pleased by the beheading of James. That is, in our view, Theudas. And in the picture of Herod, there being encouraged to take the further step of imprisoning Peter, when again we have the slight lateral movement in the betrayal of these things already signaled in Josephus' critique of the historians of this period. Of course, the latter theology of the Gentile church is now being retrospectively read back into the history of Palestine as the cause of all the repressions these early members of the Messianic movement or the Jerusalem community in Palestine are undergoing. This vituperative theology is fully developed in Eusebius' work by the 4th century, 400 years later, 300 years later. But it is already highly developed in the 2nd and 3rd century. But the real reason for these trials has to do with this constant revolutionary and religious strife, which, as Josephus documents, made its appearance with the movement began by Yehudah, Judas, and Zadok at the time of the census uprising. These charismatic and religious leaders that punctuate the history of the next 135 years are all in one way or another connected with this movement for political and religious freedom. We take, for example, the appearance of another individual a decade or so after the beheading of Theudas, whom Josephus also designates as a prophet and who so resembles Jesus in scripture. Josephus describes this type of impostor or deceiver with amazing perspicuity as led into introducing this prophet. He says that these impostors and deceivers called upon the people to follow them into the wilderness, there to show them unmistakable wonders and signs that would be performed in accordance with the providence of God. Antiquities 20, 168 to 172. And as a Slavonic Josephus, these signs are called the signs of their impending freedom. The individual in this episode is designated by no epithet other than the Egyptian. Again, he wants to do another Joshua or Jesus-like miracle, commanding the walls of Jerusalem to fall down and allow his followers to enter the city and presumably liberate it. This Egyptian escapes, but 400 of his followers are butchered by the Roman governor Felix, 52 through 60. For Acts, the number grows to 4,000, and his followers are specifically called Sicarii. Interesting. In Acts' version of the strife in Jerusalem, repression of theological dissidents of the Pauline kind is substituted for repression of revolutionaries in Josephus. And the consonant at this point frames the reference to James as if he had already introduced him. Of course, in Acts, in its present form, he did not. But this is not to say that in the source underlying Acts, he did. I think we will eventually be able to show that he did. He must have. It is not impossible. It is not possible that James suddenly erupts into the text in the same chapter in which the other James is removed. And the notice as it now exists assumes that we leave a message. This assumes that we leave a message for James the just, Mary's son. The text as we have it does not, look at this right here. It says he must have it. It is not possible. Read again. It is not possible that James suddenly erupts into the text in the same chapter in which the other James is removed, and the notice as it now exists assumes that we know who he is. That we know who he is. The text as we have it does not say that Peter went to the house of Mary to leave a message for James the Just, Mary's son, called the brother of Jesus. Nor does it then go on to delineate who this James was, which would have been normal if he had not previously been mentioned. No, it treats James as known and he was unknown. It treats James as known and he was known. We will be able to show when analyzing early church sources and the Nazarene Acts, Clementine recognitions, that James was indeed mentioned earlier, probably on several occasions, but the traces have been overwritten with more obscurantist storytelling or mythologizing. Ooh-wee, last page of chapter 6. If you're getting some understanding, give me a 2 up in the chat. History versus literature, man. Yeah, it looked like Jesus' family was the leaders of the movement. That's what it's looking like. A lot of overwriting in dealing with the New Testament. A lot of overwriting. Because you got to remember, every scribe is employed by someone in authority. Now we understand, too, dealing with the chronology of the New Testament, the date from the dates in which the New Testament was written. Paul was writing first. Paul let us begin the New Testament and end them, if we're talking chronological order. Revelations was written in the 90s, so it's 14 more books after Revelation. If you're dealing with it chronologically, that's crazy. That is crazy. Page 46. One of the places in Acts, James would have been mentioned earlier, would have been in the various comings and goings on the Temple Mount, where Peter and John are mentioned, but no James. Acts 3, 1-11. This is surprising. These lacunae are made good in the pseudo-Clementine recognitions or the Nazarene Acts, where in the parallel material having to do with these early comings and goings on the Temple Mount, the real James, our James, is mentioned extensively. Facts. Salute YHWH'S, James the Just. Salute the brother. Stand up, brother. In addition, James would have been mentioned in the first chapter of Acts, where the most important matter facing the incipient church would have been regulated. That is, choosing the successor to the departed Yeshua. Here, the choosing of Yaakov or James as leader of the Jerusalem community would have been described. Instead, a more folkloric history takes its place, which purports to tell the story of what became the individual who betrayed Yeshua named Judas. Also the name of the third brother of Yeshua. You think that's a coinky dink? The nigga that betrayed him got the same name as one of his brothers. Okay. Also, okay, it is rather Yehuda's end that is depicted in Acts in the most lurid detail. This and how the matter of succession to Judas was regulated. Then James was probably mentioned a little prior to the material in chapter 12 about Peter and James, which is paralleled by an episode in the Nazarene Acts, pseudo-Clementine recognitions. After James is attacked by Paul in the temple, we've read it on this channel before, describing how James sends off Peter from Jericho. Hold on. After James is attacked by Paul in the temple, describing how James sends off Peter from the Jericho area to confront Simon Magus in Caesarea. According to Acts' chronology, this would be following the mention of Theudas and Judas the Galilean in chapter 5, and the story of the stoning of Stephen that follows in chapters 6-7, itself probably replacing this attack on James. Of course, there is no good reason to stone this Stephen, and we were showed that this episode actually replaces a different one. also preserved in the Pseudo-Clementine recognition of the Nazarene Acts about Paul's activities prior to his famous vision on the road to Damascus. This episode will have to do with an actual physical assault by Paul on the leader of the community, James. Yep, thought he was dead. Beat him down and threw him off the top of the steps. This attack ended in grave injury to James, but not death. And his flight together with most of the members of his community to somewhere in the Jericho area. That is somewhere in the neighborhood of Qumran, the Dead Sea area. The substitution here will follow the same modus operandi as some of the other substitutions and overwrites we are noting here. But the main lines of the original materials are still discernible underneath. Finally, there is the matter of the crucifixion of the two sons of Judah the Galilean, James and Simon, during the procuratorship of Tiberius Alexander, 46 to 48. This crucifixion, which is a curious one, is also important. In Josephus, it follows the mention of the famine, the Theudas episode, and the description of the appointment of Tiberius Alexander as procurator. In an execution resembling both Jesus and that of John the Baptist, Tiberius Alexander ordered that these two sons of Yehuda the Galilean be crucified. Here, as we have seen, Josephus mentions Yehuda the Galilean, who caused the people to revolt at the time of the census, which was in 6 CE, which forms the basis of the parallel notice in Acts. But why Alexander had these two crucified and what they had done to deserve such punishment, Josephus never explains. In addition, the parallels between the messianic style families of Yehuda the Galilean and that family purportedly stemming from either Joseph and Mary or Cleophas and Mary remain striking. Bag drop, boy. Bag drop. What are the connection between these two clusters of messianic individuals? And in what manner do they overlap? Short of an undoctored presentation of this period, we shall undoubtedly never know. Oh, wait. These are the coins right here, y'all, at the bottom. Jewish or Judean 66 to 70 CE revolutionary coins showing the amphora and palm tree, CF Vespasian's Judea Captor coin above. These men now own currency and everything. See that? That's what we're going to get into next time we go live. How is James, the brother of Yahshua, pictured in Paul's letters? Oh, we. I know. Everybody mad, trying to curse you. We're just looking at it through that historical lens because it's very, very important. Other than that, you out here getting hoodwinked. You know what I mean? You out here getting hoodwinked, being played like a fiddle by the false gods and the inspiring literature that they decided to go ahead and put down. You dig? So I would say as your brother scrutinized everything, you understand? Search everything, scrutinize it. If it don't sit well with your spirit, don't receive it. Yeah, but if you got that thirst and that hunger, you understand? Hey, ain't nothing for you to tap in. Tap in with us. You understand? Tap in with us. All right? We got the dream team over these ways. I'm going to keep it real with you. Tap on in. It's a plethora of information. Whether we talking carnal information or physical information or spiritual. Plethora. Indeed. If y'all enjoyed that today and got some understanding, give me a one up in the chat. Bless up, family. Bless up, bless up, bless up. Bless up, bless up, bless up, bless up. History verse literature. Nazarene, this is part 108. History verse literature, part 5. The historical James the Judge. Indeed. Oh, it's all good, all good. Shout out to the Nazarites. Shout out to the Creator Gang. Gang, baby. Creator Gang. We bring them, we raise them. I was on the phone with a brother with a debate league earlier. And, I had to tell him don't none of his people won't smoke with the Creator Gang, man. I said, whoever you think you got, you ain't got. I'm trying to tell you. Dig? But they want us to come on over there and take their money. They got a grand prize and dig? So we picked the topics we want to debate. I'm like, all right. The grand prize is $500 or $700. I said, all right, I'll take your money. I'll take your money. You dig? So I may go over there and run through that real quick. I told him right out the gate, I want to debate food or meats offered to idols according to the Torah, and was Paul an apostle or an apostate? He's like, dang. I was like, who you got over there for that? You dig? So we've got some things working in the mix. You know what I mean? But I told him, I said, look, man, Creative Gang come to your platform, it's over. We'll run right through it. But get ready to pay out. That's all I'm saying. Get ready to pay out. You did. He was talking about the God. Peace, salute to the God. Selah, shalom. He brought up Selah. He said, man, who that crazy nigga that smoked that weed that you be supporting? I said, yeah, salute to the God. It's my brother, man. You did. That's Selah. You did. He was like, man, that nigga sound crazy. I said, you ain't got nobody over there for him. I guarantee it. You ain't got nobody over there for him. You did. He was like, yeah, I hear you, Mally, man. I hear you. Man, you used to be like one of my favorites. He can't mumbling out his used to stuff. It used to be one of my favorites, man. You one of the hardest in Israel and all that. It did. Used to. You mean used to? Yeah, man, because whatever you own now, this, that. I say, well, look, by your own admission, I'm that dude. So you owe it to yourself to come see what I'm talking about. Even if you think you disagree. Or you owe it to yourself to say, man, let me go see what I'm talking about, man. Let me go holler at him. You dig? I said, but I know y'all ain't went this deep, bro. Y'all ain't went into no history. Because guess what? Y'all be singing a total different tone. You ain't ready, man. But they got a pot together and they putting the money, and the winner takes all. It did. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to run through that, and I'm going to bring the Creative Gang through. You did. We'll take your money. You dig? So I like, you owe it to yourself to come see what I'm talking about. I'm talking about some used to. You dig? Because who you talking about that's a problem, that's a beast out here. I used to be your favorite. The old me ain't ready for the new me. So you owe it to yourself. Come holler at me and see what's going on. He tried to bring up the old Osprey and all that too. He's like the old. Yeah, old Osprey. Yeah. Great read, man. You know what I mean? Great read, great spiritual sustenance. I was like, man, y'all busy talking about 12 tribe charts. Who is Esau? Tribal warfare. Can the Gentiles get saved? Can you hump on white women's? You dig? I like, bro, we over here talking about different corporeal worlds, Etheria, the cosmos. You dig? He was like, brother, that's what I'm saying. It's simplicity in the scriptures. I said, what did I just say that was so complex? What, cosmos? Physical worlds? You understand? So we got that setting up in the background too. I'll let y'all know what time it is, man. It ain't nothing to it. It's easy work over here. And I told him, you ain't got nothing for us when you done talking. You dig? I'm gonna go through the Bible and prove my position. You think you ready for the cleanup? You think you ready to clean up? You know what I mean? I was like, you got any questions? Go ahead and holler at the brother, man. Reach out to him. It's all good. So we got a few things in the making, man. You say Dreadful Cosmine stuck on her. My brothers, I see y'all in the building. Creative gang, baby. Dreadful Cosmine stuck on earth. Peace to the God. Selah Shalom. They running from a white man book. That came up too. White man and all that. And I'm like, bro, everything you touch, the white man had his hands on. So I took him to the Blue Letter Bible. Show y'all what I showed him. Like, you can't play me. You know, like you can't play me with that. And then in the end, he admitted it. He was like, okay, yeah, I see what you. I'm like, bro, that's why I was saying, because he brought up something I said in a soundbite. He was like, I heard you say that whoever wrote it don't matter. I say, bro, after we find out who wrote it, we still got to get past it and deal with the info. I understand people stuck on who bringing the source or bringing the information, but after we do all that, and you realize that the man who fathered Paleo Hebrew is a white man, when you realize the man that fathered the first Hebrew concordance ever is a white man, and when you find out James Strong is a white man, what are you talking about? So then I told him, I was like, well, the Crown owns the KJV. You know what I'm saying when I say the Crown, bro? He's like, over in England. I said, yeah, but what's the Crown though? right? Are we talking about what you sit on the monarch's head? And because that's placed on the monarch's head, that gives the monarch authority to do whatever they want. Is that what we talking about? You understand? He ain't know. I was like, come on, bro, you ain't even ready, man. But I told him what it was. I say, bro, the KJV is owned by the crown. The crown is a Masonic order that runs the 1 square mile banking district in London. You got London, then you got the city of London. The crown also is responsible for studying out every English monarch from Henry VIII all the way up to the whore queen who just passed. The crown jewel she wore, the crown that she actually wears, the crown owns it. When she done taking pictures with it on, they snatch it off. They snatch that wig off her head, and she got to get it back. You see what I'm saying? That same Masonic banking organization who sets the price for gold every morning, that organization owns the Bible, the KJV. He didn't even know it. I think, right, man, what we talking about? Let me show y'all, just in case y'all ain't know. So we got to get past the white man argument. Because the white man touched everything you think you talk, every spiritual book you think you talking about. You dig? It done ran through Rome's filter, most of it. Or it done ran, you know what I'm saying, it came through who you call a European. It has. You dig? Don't let these mumble mouth Negroes tell you none of that and then pull up Charles Darwin. Who the hell is Darwin? Darwin ain't no freedom fighter. Darwin ain't your boy Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And the black power. Then we going to Egypt. You pull up Wallace Budge. Well, man, y'all finna quit playing with me. You can't get me with the white man argument because everything you touching them ran through them. Everything. So at some point, we got to get past that and deal with the information. And that's what I told him. You know what I mean? And he's like, oh, okay, I can see that. Let me show y'all that, just in case y'all ain't know that. Watch it. We're going to go to the Blue Letter Party, like we always do. Let me show y'all this. The crown owns the Bible. I say, good night, boy. I don't think nobody need to be saying that. Period. Let's just bang on the info. You did? That's all we need to do. All right, so I just went to the Blue Letter Bible, and then you just go all the way down to the bottom. See that KJV right there? You making this up, Malaki? I don't believe you, buddy. What is that right there? The KJV, the authorized version of the King James Version, 1611, 1769. Outside of the United Kingdom, the KJV is in the public domain. Within the United Kingdom, the rights to the KJV are vested in the crown. Bag drop, boy. Bag drop, boy. And you mean to tell me that's a whole bunch of Bantu Negroes from the Congo? The crown? Huh? You know what I mean? That was about to say, but you do, so you believe, you do know King James was, I'm like, bro, you know I know the history. I know about the Jacobites and all that. I'm talking about you, but do you mean to tell me that the crown is a group of Bantu Negroes from the Congo? Because that's who owns it. Y'all see that? That's who owns it right there. I don't even know what the Millie mouthing is about. What are we really reading her? What's the argument? You can't come outside with that, man. It's 2023. You can't come outside with the racist, it's a white man's book and a white man world. Look, you'll never get nowhere like that. All y'all tired. All y'all ain't getting no spiritual sustenance. I mean, look, we can even only watch Sinetta so long. Salute to God, Sinetta, but it's only going to vibrate on a certain level. You understand? If you're dealing with creator, we above all that, man. We vibrating on high frequencies. You dig? So that's why I only can watch it for a little while, Unless it's entertainer, a crazy crack pipe like Black Jesus Minister on there, I'll watch it then, because that's funny. Black Jesus is a funny dude. Apostle, he's funny. Black Jesus funny. You know what I mean? But to get spiritual sustenance, nah. So myself, I only can watch it up to so long. If I'm not being entertained, I even switch that. It did, because it's only vibrating at a certain frequency that you vibrate above, being that you deal with Creator. You know what I mean? That's just the truth, man. That's just the truth. But y'all see right there, all y'all know how to go to the blue letter. Just go there. Just so you know, I didn't type this up. Go there. Go to a chapter or verse. Genesis 1:1 if you got to, and just scroll all the way down. You did? And go to the part where say KJV, the crown on the KJV, the rights to the KJV are vested in the crown, Jack. Whatever you talking about. You see? And the crown is not ran by Nam Bantu Negro from the Congo. And they a whole bunch of Negroes with afros and picks. So we got to stop acting as if who you call the European or the white man has not touched all your spiritual texts. It has been. It has been. Everything has been tampered or redacted or edited. Even I speak. We know that. We ain't even scared to have a conversation about it. We say that about the Bible. It's like the world over. Dang. Dang. You know what I mean? Let's just talk about it, man. So I want to show y'all that right there. So yeah, I'm gonna, you know, we're gonna set some things up. I'll let y'all know when that is. I ain't hitting no tops in a minute. So I told myself, look, I'll run through your whole debate league. Anybody want to take me up on those topics? I'll run through your whole debate league real quick, bro. That's easy. You know what I mean? Bring out this history, bring out everything I'm talking about, and take it from there. I see Facebook views on here. Say facts, YAH'KI, bring it out. It don't say your name. Shalom to you too. Let me go on up and shout everybody out. I'm gonna get on up out of here. Any questions? Anybody got any questions? Let me know. Any questions? Let me know. We looking to do another fleshless Passover this year. You know what I mean? And just celebrate and thank Creator for all He's done for us. Passover should be like April the 2nd. Whether you attend or whether you don't, ain't no condemnation on any of that. But y'all know it's fleshless over here. So we ain't killing no lambs. We ain't sprinkling no blood. We ain't doing none of that. I'm going to bring out all the accounts of the Passover from the Torah to the Nazarene, the same literature. And there's a great one in OWASP too. That's tight. And Moses explained him killing that lamb and what happened. Thorough. You know what I mean? So it's all good. Getting to it. So we probably be doing that probably the beginning of April. I'm gonna live stream it, you know, and tap on in. We're gonna eat good, laugh, you know, go over spiritual sustenance and all that and get it done. I did one last year, bro. Say vegan Passover. Yep, I did one last year. We kicked it. But it was one in Joshua the 5th chapter as well. You got to read the Septuagint for that one though. I'll show y'all. I'm gonna show y'all. Let me show y'all in one of the oldest versions of the Bible, a vegan Passover. Dang. He keep bringing up stuff. Malaki, just stop it, Malaki. I hear it all the time, man. People be tripping. Man, you gotta bring up that. You gonna bring up something else? Man, stop bringing all that stuff up. Let me show y'all a vegan Passover. Let me show y'all a vegan Passover, man. That's a good one. I like what let's see what I put in there. A vegan Passover. Let me show y'all a vegan Passover in Joshua the 5th chapter coming out of the Septuagint, which is older than the Old Testament you have in English in your Bible today. About 1400 years earlier. Now look, I'm going to show y'all. Let me show y'all a vegan Passover. Watch this. Watch this. And then we'll pull up the KJV and show what that say. And we'll contrast it, right? Watch this. I shot this to bruh. He's like, how you gonna have the Passover and you ain't got no lamb? I say, bruh, just like they did in Joshua 5. Huh? They go to Joshua 5. Even when you read in the KJV, it don't say nothing about slaughtering no lambs. It's Septuagint. Hey man, tell them young boys I do's this. All right. Tell them I do's this. Let me show you. All right, so this is Joshua 5 in the Septuagint. See, it's Greek on one side and English on the other. When you get down to verse 10 through 12, look at this. This is how they kept Passover. This is a vegan Passover. In one of your oldest Bibles that the public has access to. I know they mad. I mean, they be like, hey, nigga, they're gonna go hang this nigga. And because a lot of Israelites believe that's blasphemy. Check this out. And the children of Israel kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening to the westward of Jericho on the opposite side of the Jordan in the plain. And they ate. This is what they ate for Passover, y'all. And they ate of the grain of the earth, unleavened and new corn. And this day the manna fell after they had eaten of the corn of the land, and the children of Israel no longer had manna. And they took the fruits of the land of the Phoenicians in that year, showing the Phoenicians and Canaanite connection. But notice it didn't even say they went back to slaughtering animals. It said what? They ate what they grew, the fruits of the land of the Phoenicians. So if y'all understand, in the Septuagint Bible, which is older, way older than the New Old Testament you have in your King James Bible or any other Bible, do y'all see that no slaughter of no lamb is mentioned in Joshua 5, 10 through 12? But it does tell you what they ate. And what they ate was not a slaughtered lamb. If y'all see that, give me a one up in the chat if y'all see that. Bless up, bless up, bless up. Give me a one up in the chat if y'all see that. And that's a Septuagint right there I just showed. Let's pull the KJV up. They get mad at you about a vegan Passover. What, you gonna have a tofu lamb? Hell to the no. I ain't even have nothing there that resemble flesh. Resemble a lamb. Nah, I'm good. I'm done pretending. Nigga. Matter of fact, I don't pretend. That's the point. Shit. I'm not gonna go get no spun, no tofu lamb and bring it to. No, I'm cool. No, I'm cool. Let's go to Joshua. That was right before we invaded Jericho, mailman. So right after the 40 years in the wilderness, we about to invade Jericho. Septuagint records that what we ate for Passover was not, and we had our flocks. We was in the wilderness with our flocks, huh? So this is how the KJV read. This is how the KJV read. And children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening in the plains of Jericho. And they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes, parched corn in the self same day. And the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna anymore, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. So there's no slaughtering of no lambs either in the KJV in Joshua 5, 10 through 12. But if you was to exegete, then you could say they kept Passover in verse 10, which means they slaughtered lambs. And the next day they ate unleavened bread. That's why I went to the Septuagint, which is older. It clears it up. It clears it up. And the children of Israel kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening to the westward of Jericho, on the opposite side of the Jordan in the plain. That one said Gilgal. And they ate of just what they ate. And they ate of the grain of the earth. And they ate of the grain of the earth, unleavened and new corn. That was the Passover. See that? Passover. And that's the Septuagint, mailman. That's the Greek on the left side and the English on the right side. You know what? Let me find something else too. So when I realized that, when I was doing my studies years ago, I realized that I say, dang, okay. Well, if the Septuagint is older than the Masoretic that's in the KJV, and the Septuagint is saying that that Passover was kept and wasn't no slaughter, no lambs, right? That's what it was saying. I was like, dang. So let me go pull something up real quick. Show y'all some the Nazarene literature real quick. Gospel. Show y'all some. Show y'all how the Nazarenes and them kept Passover. Preview. Share how that worked. Bang. Boy, that scared a lot of Israelites get mad at you on that one, boy. Man, you going off, Ark. Going off. Okay, bang. Hold on, yeah. Right here. Chapter 6. The childhood and youth of Yeshua Mashiach. He delivered the lion from the hunters. So being I just read that in the Septuagint, right? That it is possible to keep a Passover without any blood being shed. Okay. Then I ran across the Nazarene lit. Now look at this. Chapter 6. Now Joseph and Mary, his parents, went up to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And they observed the feast. Look at this. Nazarites or Nazarenes observed Passover. And they observed the feast after the manner of their brethren, who abstained from what? Bloodshed, and the eating of flesh, and from strong drink. And when he was 12 years old, he went to Jerusalem with them after the custom of the feast. So that shows everybody can keep Passover the same way. The Nazarites and the Essenes kept Passover totally different. And it was without the shedding of blood and the chewing on the backs of animals, and even without the strong drink, the liquor. Oh, wait. I know somebody mad. Somebody probably Hitler cussing me out by now. Nigga. You know what I mean? Dude, man, you gonna blasphemy. I cancel and bind every unclean spirit sent after me. Break it, bind it, and shine this Ethereal light to go ahead and raise him on up. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, bang, bang, bang. All right, y'all. But look, I'm about to get up out of here. I don't see no questions or nothing like that. Yeah, Cosmo and Kyle. Y'all go like, subscribe, and share. Then go ahead and subscribe to the brother. The brother becoming with some out of the exosphere type knowledge. Then you tired of hearing the same redundant breakdowns and dry eyes. Yeah, go give my brother Cosmo and Kyle. Kyle, peace. Salute, brother. All right, salute. That's my YAH'S to say Facebook use. I don't know why it ain't coming through, right? All right, they maybe had some like, subscribe, share, go over to SHALOM TV. You understand? Powerful documentaries, powerful videos, powerful breakdowns. Y'all go like, subscribe, and share. You did. That's create a gang. You know what I mean? We need to support each other. So y'all like, subscribe, and share. Any other brothers and sisters, go like, subscribe, and share to our sister channel, our sisters in the building, Nazarene. What is it? Nazarene Faithist channel. I think it's Nazarene Faithist channel, something like that. Y'all go subscribe to the sisters. They be putting something down every so-called Sunday, getting it in. You understand? And we also got coming. We about to start uploading. We got to create a gang TV YouTube channel now, boys. So it's about to be a real problem. You dig? All our debates we uploading on there. You dig? We about to really make somebody mad around this deal, man. You dig? So just let y'all know what's coming, what we got popping. All praises, glory now to the Creator. the ever-present, the all in all, that always was, is, and never shall be, the mighty I am, the mighty Yahweh. I salute you all in the name of the Creator. Oh, hold on. Before I get up out of here, I got to show. I told y'all I got the receipts. Your cousin's a hoe. I'm going to show y'all Bernice. Show y'all Bernice. We talking about Bernice early. Well, I got the receipts. Show y'all something. Nah, Jack, I got the receipts. I got the receipts. I got the receipts. Y'all need to know about this heifer right here, boy. I got the receipts. Okay, bang. All these people that he naming, like, dang, you know this was going on. They might want to. They probably gonna be ready to sue them. Yeah, your cousins are hoe. Everybody want to see them extract.
So the fun thing with the serpent is, how does a serpent talk? And not only that, but why is the serpent's punishment to crawl?
Skip that. It's only 6 minutes long, y'all. I'm gonna end with that. When this is over, I'm gonna go ahead and tap on out. All right. Love all y'all in deed and in truth. All right. Shout out to my Nazarene family. Shout out to the creative gang. We bring them, we raise them. I'm about to play this about Bernice. Yeah, your cousins are up. Your cousins are up. I feel you, sure. All right, let me show y'all this. Bless up, bless up. Bless up, bless up. Right on for the prayers and support family. All right, what my thing here? What's going on? Oh, there it is. I'm gonna say, man. Real thing this. Isaac Dub. What's the word, fam? What's the word? 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 All right, y'all. I'm about to tap on out of this real quick. I'm gonna let y'all play this. And I'm out of here. On tab.
I am Bernice, daughter of Herod, princess of the eastern lands. My family are loyal servants of the Roman Empire, collecting taxes for the Caesar. But the reign of one of Rome's most decadent Caesars, the madman Nero, inspired a great disloyalty within me. For I believe that Nero's hedonistic indiscretion brought a curse on the entire Roman Empire in the form of a powerful uprising of the zealot Jews of Judea. Now, I am proud that my grandmother was a Jewess from the family Maccabees, the lineage from which the Jews' Messiah, or Savior, was prophesied to come. But these revolting zealot Jews believed in a violent, militant Savior who would come to defeat the Romans. And their latest in a string of messiahs, Eleazar, was wreaking chaos throughout the empire. Eleazar and his followers defaced my family's palaces. They raided my grandfather's tomb. And finally, they succeeded in burning Rome itself. They had to be stopped. Our only hope was General Vespasian of the family Flavius. Being Rome's leading general for years, he had already crushed a religious uprising in Gaul and Brittany, completely annihilating the Druids there. So Nero called upon Vespasian to obliterate the Jewish uprising in Judea. But Vespasian had ambitions of his own to take the throne from the detestable Nero. And I, at the risk of Nero's vengeance, pledged my family's support to Vespasian and to his family Flavius, who, if successful, would take their place among the gods. Oh, for that I have been called harlot, mistress, and concubine by jealous, ignorant plebeians, and I admit to having flirted with the attentions of Vespasian, whose strength and military power I recognized and respected. But it was the talents of his son, Titus Flavius, that not only captured my heart and my loyalty, but inspired within me the ambition to become wife of a Caesar. So, Vespasian began the campaign against the uprising Jews. He then returned to Rome, was successfully crowned Caesar, and rightly took his place among the gods. It was then Titus who waged battle after battle, demolishing the Jewish rebellion completely and declaring himself the son of a god. When the Jews refused to worship him, Titus razed the Temple of Jerusalem. He succeeded in capturing their Messiah, Eleazar, and he had him crucified. Thereafter, I began living in the Roman palace, working closely with both Vespasian and Titus, and the greatest intellectuals and scientists of all of Rome, some of which were Jews. We sought to come up with a plan that would once and for all keep the Jews of Judea pacified, ensuring that they remain obedient Roman citizens. It was then that my knowledge of the typology used in Jewish literature would become useful. Together with the great scholar Pliny the Elder, we conspired to create the story of a pacifistic Jewish Messiah who had already come, and who taught the Jews to turn the other cheek and give to Caesar what is Caesar's. We used this Jewish typology, a type of symbolism, to construct the life of this Messiah out of the events of each of Titus's battle campaigns, thereby memorializing Titus as the true savior of Rome for all posterity, and convincing the whole world to embrace Caesar's Messiah.